Just want to say before the show starts, The Troy Show is a listener discretion advised show. We're fair, we're balanced here, everyone gets a voice. We can't quite control exactly what that voice is going to be, so please keep that in mind as you listen to the show. Any business or organization mentioned on the show is not a sponsor of The Troy Show, nor is it affiliated unless otherwise stated. The Troy Show is not an official representation of the city of Troy, Ohio, USA, or the government thereof. This is Troy on Air. All right, I'm going to adjust a audio knob here, and hopefully this week I had the certificate printed out for our call screener in training. She was going to graduate this week. Guess not. We're going to have to put that on hold for another week. Welcome to the Troy Show for April 20th, 2020. We are resetting the counter since Mike DeWine has shut something down. 0 days now. We are back to zero on that, as it has been confirmed that the schools for the state will be finishing the school year as far as in-person learning goes for the rest of the year. They have canceled that, but they are going to continue their e-learning. So you might want to read into that. I got my article from, I believe, WHIO as far as DeWine's announcement today on that matter. We are 34 days now into Troy's state of emergency, and we have a blank space on the board, on the whiteboard that we keep our counters across from me here. Outside, I think I'm going to put a counter up as far as how long it takes them to get this sidewalk repaired and get it opened back up. They've put 2x4s in the way now, so it is now impossible. You cannot possibly jump over these. You have to go around, either walk on the road or go around the back of the building to make it over there, or cross the street. Phone line tonight after our guest, which we'll introduce here in a little bit. As you might be watching on the live stream, you'll see that our camera angle is different tonight, which can mean only one thing. We do have a guest in the studio, and we will introduce him in just a minute here. Phone line tonight, 937-696-7572 is the line to dial in at after our interview tonight. We will open the phone lines up after that. 937-696-7572. And, of course, our call screener will take your call and walk you through the process there. Also, our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beautiful Troy Show is where you can find the page. If you want to continue the discussion maybe a little bit further, facebook.com/Troy Ohio, or /groups/Troy Ohio Citizens. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest tonight here at the Troy Show, Mr. Paul Reese. Paul, how are you tonight?
Good, Doc. How are you? Thanks for having me tonight.
Doing pretty good myself. You're running for sheriff of Miami County for the seat.
Yes.
And that was originally for the March 17th election.
That was. We had a small setback, and here we still are.
Well, it's good to see that you are still out here making the rounds. I know some candidates have kind of maybe laid off due to they want to be as safe as possible in these times. Some people are kind of continuing their campaigns. They're just switching it up. I think personally it's important during times like these that candidates continue to show us what they are made of in these situations. So before we get into tonight, there's kind of a big thing that I want you to be able to express to the people that may be voting in the election. What are the official dates and the official ways that they can vote for you in the election now with the changes that have been brought about through our health department here in Ohio?
Sure. So the election is going to be a mail-in election only. Some folks call this an absentee ballot. And the election will be actually on the 28th, just a few days away. Again, it's going to be a mail-in only election. You have a ballot request form that you have to get in. It's called a Form 11A. You get your ballot through the Board of Elections. They mail it to you. Then you fill that ballot in, and then you drop it back off either in person or you can mail it back into the Board of Elections. It has to be back in, though, before the evening of the 27th, if I understand it correctly.
Okay. And how do you feel that's going to affect your campaign?
Well, I think it's agreed by everybody that this is going to be a much lower voter turnout. So many people for years have been adapt to going in on election day and casting their ballot. That's the way that I've always liked to vote. This is something different for me. And it's changed things. The voter turnout's going to be lower. How those numbers are going to turn out, that remains to be seen. I don't think that there's a distinct advantage or disadvantage to anybody here, but I would venture to say that after the election is over with all these primaries going on across the state, there's going to be some issues and some problems that'll have to be resolved.
Okay, but you're feeling pretty confident that the word's been getting out there, because the way I see it is you guys spend, no matter what political side you're on, a year or so, if not more, sometimes 2 years, getting that date out there, getting that into voters' heads. I would think now with the shortened window to get that information back out would be a little bit of a challenge, or a scare at least in anyone's campaign.
It has been a challenge because each candidate was ramping up to that March 17th date. And so you backwards plan a lot of your events and what you're going to let go, your information, things like that. But that all changed. And so each candidate was going to have to decide how they wanted to proceed with their particular campaign in light of this COVID-19 epidemic, or pandemic, I should say, and what was going to be important.
Well, I'm glad to see that your campaign and many others are getting through this, and they're coming up with ways to educate the voter on what the ballot date is that you have to get that back in. So tonight we've got a stack of paperwork. I want to give you a chance real quick before we get into the meat of tonight's topics, just a chance to give the listeners before we start some bullet points about what you're running on and what you plan to do as sheriff for Miami County.
Well, first is my background. I live up in Pick with my wife, Denise. We've got 6 kids between us, 12 grandkids, 13 now just as of the other day. Sorry about that. I've got nearly 35 years of law enforcement experience dating back to 1985. After that, I've got, I think it was 16 years here at Miami County, another 10 years with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Concurrent to that service, I also have 24 years of service with the United States military. Currently, I'm a chief warrant officer and a special agent with the United States Army Criminal Investigation Division Command. So I've got a lot of years in the bag, so to speak, in this line of work. I also hold a Bachelor of Arts in Organizational Management and a Master of Arts in Business and Organizational Security Management from Webster University. I had to make a decision to run again. Back in 2016, I ran. It was 4-person primary. I came in second in that election. It was a very tough race for everybody. And based off those results and how well we did then, I decided to give this another shot.
When did you decide to officially start running? I know the official announced date, but how long have you thought about running for office?
I've been on again and off again about running ever since 2016. And I had to do a lot of soul searching. I talked to a lot of friends, family, people that supported me last time. And it was the totality of the circumstances. I got back home in June of last year, and I had to make a decision, and I made that decision. I'm happy that I made it. It's been a tough race, but here we are.
Okay. I've got a huge list here, and you sent me a lot of documents and paperwork to be prepared for this. I think that speaks to who you are as a person. And one of the biggest concerns that I've seen from a lot of people of the opposite camp, and this is just an observation, they keep saying that you don't have experience or your promotion history is an issue. But here in my hand, you've printed off, or I've printed off, you sent me over a huge list, and I can kind of hold it up for the camera here. You can't really quite see the thickness of the stack of things you've done dating back to as far as, I believe, 1990, if I'm not mistaken in here.
I think that one may go back to probably...
I think 80s, actually.
1984, maybe?
Yeah. So in here, it shows me that you've worked your ranks up quite a bit through your military service.
Correct.
which just having military service in the first place, I would think would be a huge bump in people's perception of you.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that's been an issue? I mean, where did that start that you don't have experience? That whole...
Well, it's nothing more than my opponent. I guess getting some free advertising here in the last couple of weeks. He's put out a flyer we call it a scorecard, and he highlights his years of service in each rank, and that's fine. But he purports that I have no leadership experience. He purports that I was never a supervisor or anybody at the rank of sergeant or above at the sheriff's office. So therefore, I have no right, no reason to be sheriff. And this has been going on for quite a while. I talked about some things here the other day, and I find it funny. Sheriff Duchek basically said that he couldn't imagine someone not leading the sheriff's office that had never been promoted through the ranks. Now you got to stop and understand this. The man that he worked for, Sheriff Cox, Charles Cox, proudly served this agency in this county for 28 years. Sheriff Cox came from Troy Police Department as a patrolman. He came straight into this agency as the sheriff, proudly served for 28 years, done a great job, but he was never promoted through the ranks. Never. Do you think that Dave Duchek ever confronted him about that? Absolutely not. So why is it any different for me?
I would think in today's political society, especially given the last election, experience is not quite what people are looking for anymore in a candidate. I think maybe some people are tired of the typical rigmarole that they get with politicians or people in that sphere. Here you are, trying to go into office as the sheriff, offering loads of useful experience, none of which is political per se in nature, but does show that you have quite a bit of experience in leadership. And it does show in here that. So that's something I kind of wanted to have you clear to the people as far as your stance on that. Obviously, the big issue of the night is the recent developments of, I wouldn't say a feud per se, but just things that have come out between local reporters and your campaign, and has been the investigations that have surrounded your campaign. So I want you to kind of break down to me the timeline of where this all started, which obviously this started with a traffic stop by the Piqua Police Department.
Correct.
Regarding Duchek's wife for the DUI. And then there was a picture taken of the report and supposedly sent to you.
Correct.
So starting there, what happened in that scenario? What happened as far as that picture is concerned?
The picture that they've centered this entire 19-month, $500,000 investigation on originally showed up on social media probably within 24 hours of the traffic stop. What they want you to believe is that on the evening, or on the morning, I should say, of August the 8th of 2018, Sheriff Duchek's wife was stopped for OVI.
Mm-hmm.
They then want you to believe that on the evening of August the 10th of 2018, somehow, now I was on active duty orders, somehow I got so excited about this that I called a friend who works at another department, and I asked him to take a picture of a computer terminal inside his car and to send it to me so I can send it to some guy 2 counties away who's talking to a bunch of people up in Piqua about this OVI arrest, and that I'd done it with the intent that 19 months down the road, if I would run for sheriff, that I would somehow use this to embarrass Dave Duchek. That's what this whole 19-month, $500,000 investigation was over. The problem is that according to all the BCI reports, according to the newspaper articles, according to everything that's been said, that this horrendous crime was committed on the evening of August the 10th, 2018 at 9:27 hours. The problem with that is this. At 9:13 hours on the evening of August the 10th, 2018, I was laying on a CT scan table getting a CT scan in Pinkerton, Ohio. I was extremely sick. I was home on leave for my son's wedding, and we thought that I had throat cancer. My wife was talking to several people. One of those people is also my friend from Tip City. Now, that's nothing new, and they would know that's nothing new because they found it necessary to get a year's worth of my cell phone records in their investigation for one call. I held on to this information for quite a while, but then here just recently I let it go that I was on that CT scan table when they said that this horrendous crime was committed. My friend I talk to all the time. He's been a friend for 25 years. So we would talk all the time. My wife would call him if I was sick, if I was hurt, if anything was going on. They want you to believe that based on these phone records that they got, that because he came to work that night and because he was logged on to the system that all the other law enforcement officers in this county and administrative people could have been logged on to. And because me and him were talking at that time and the text messages went back and forth at that time, this is what happened.
When they subpoenaed the records, was the photo found within those messages?
No.
All that showed is that you were talking to a friend that you have been friends with for a very long time while going through a painful experience in your life. That would make sense to me, talk to people while you're going through that. What this shows, I think what a lot of people have seen from this is maybe, do you believe that there is an issue? Because was it 33 people that accessed the records of that particular report that was on the police computer?
Correct. It was 33 other people that also accessed the record. Now, please keep in mind, they didn't get cell phone records for those 33 people.
Just yours?
Just mine. And just the officers from Tip City and just one other guy. And
so they were specifically interested in you in this situation. They were specifically interested in your friend, and they wanted to find something there. It was their original intent, whatever. We don't know if it was politically motivated, which is what you're assuming would be the case because you're running a campaign. But they're trying to say it was politically motivated for you in the photos.
Correct.
So I think that might open up more of an investigation that needs to look into why would people have access to the police? Is it common practice in law enforcement to take photos off of the police computer and send them to people outside of that active, I don't know if it was an investigation at the time, because there are proceedings before someone's actually charged in her case. But is it common practice?
Yes.
Is that something that happens a lot?
Absolutely. It's done all the time. Go out and talk to any law enforcement officer in Miami County that has those same terminal privileges. They will do it for legitimate purposes. They will look up information. They will see information that they can be briefed on about what's going on in their community. They will educate themselves off what has happened in the last 2, 3, 4 days, maybe that they've been off work. That happens all the time, and it's not a crime, by the way.
So it's not a crime for an officer. If he took his personal phone, let's say he took his personal phone and took a photo of his police computer and then just sent it to people or posted that online. Would that be an issue, or is that something that they don't have any safeguards against?
That would be an administrative violation of the department, probably.
So a policy issue, but not a legal matter.
A policy issue.
Okay.
But, again, in fairness to all law enforcement officers here in Miami County, that information is shared. It's not LEADS information. LEADS being Law Enforcement Automated Data System. It's called the Spillman system. Mm-hmm. It's an internal record system. And they share information. It comes from the 911 center, the communication center, I might add. This is how our officers communicate, our first responders communicate. And so it's not uncommon for them to take a picture and say, hey, did you see this? That's pretty common.
The information in the photo, would that have become public soon enough through a public records request? If I wanted to, could I find everything that was in that photo?
I can tell you a public records request was done 2 days after that, and the information was put out there. I can tell you that picture was put out there almost immediately.
So there's really, I don't see how this would benefit you politically to release this photo. I mean, people could easily, this was bound to make the news, this particular incident, which it did. Dash cam footage was available. I believe WDTN, WHIO, they all covered it. It's a pretty big deal when a sheriff's wife gets pulled over for DUI. So their argument, is what I'm getting at here, is that you received this photo 2 days before the information was made public. I mean, what were you feasibly supposed to do with that information?
Well, I want to say this for the record, Kyle. This is very important.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Mrs. Duchek got an OVI is not funny.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that made anybody happy about that. I knew Sherry back years ago when she worked over here at the safety building. I like Sherry, and we always got along. And it bothered me to see her in that shape. I truly felt bad for her and Dave. Every family, my family included, has got these types of problems. And there's nothing funny about it. When you're in the public view and you have a family member that goes through a tough time, like this was an addiction problem, mind you. That's all it was. And there's nothing funny about it.
Which is something you've been highlighting in your campaign about the struggles, whether it be active law enforcement or the spouses of law enforcement, the families of law enforcement, what they struggle because of what these guys have to deal with out on the road. So in that scenario, I would see where that would frustrate you, to see how politically this has been used by people over something like that, because the reality of addiction problems is it could be anybody. It really could be. And that's something that I think you've laid out in your campaign as far as dealing with this if you were elected sheriff, getting in there and dealing with issues like this and making sure that these guys have the support that they need, these men and women have the support that they need.
Correct. What this job does to our first responders is unbelievable. Suicide, alcoholism, depression, PTSD, family problems, marital problems, it all gets rolled into this job. This job, no matter if you're a firefighter, you work on the squad, whether you're a police officer, a deputy, a corrections officer, this job will grind you. And you also have to understand, nobody calls 911 because they're having a good day.
Mm-hmm.
They're calling you. Nobody walks into that jail and has any of these inmates say, hey, I'm really glad to see you today. It doesn't work that way. So, they're dealing with negatives from the time they get in until the time they go home. And sometimes they have to deal with negatives at home. So again, the alcoholism, the drug addiction, the depression, it's rampant in this job. We lost so many officers last year to suicide nationwide. And I want to address that. There's two very important things that I want to do if I'm elected to help address that. The first thing is I want to bring the family back into this job. Years ago when I first started, we had family outings, we had things that we did. It was more of a family atmosphere. I want to go back to that. It is important to the family, to the supporters of our law enforcement officers, our corrections officers, and our first responders to know that their loved one is supported by the folks that they work with and they work for. So I want to bring the family back into that. I've got a good plan to do that. The other thing, and I'm sure I'm going to get beat up over this at some point, and I'll caveat this by saying my list of faults, a lot of people know me around here. I'm not a perfect person. But the other thing that I have to do is I want to bring God back into this job. I don't mean that from a platform of being a holy roller. I'm simply saying this. I also have to be responsible not only for the training, the education, the equipping, and everything of our people, but they also have to have their psychological, physiological, and spiritual sides addressed. Not by me, but I have to make sure that those resources are available, and I have to help them get to those resources. In this job, when you say you have a problem, you can be chewed up, and I want to put an end to that. They need some help.
So it's going to take a personal approach is what you've offered, and you've cleared that up, that you want to go into this position helping people and not, because we might as well address the rumors while we're on the topic, because you just made a video the other day posted to your Facebook page regarding your plans stepping into office. The rumor's been going around that you're just going to go in there and start cleaning house at all levels. Mm-hmm. But you have a different take on that.
I have a very different take, and that's why I put that video out the other day. I'm not going to back off the fact that there is going to be a few administrative changes at the top. And again, those folks, they know who they are, and they know what they have done, and they know what they haven't done. Moving beyond that, almost everybody else in that department is legally protected by a binding contract. They are covered by a contract. I couldn't get rid of people even if I wanted to. That's not what I want to do. As a leader, I have to go in, and it's my responsibility to help get the waters calm, address my team, start leader development, start getting the family involved. Those are my responsibilities. And those guys and girls are already having a hard enough time over there knowing that there could be a change or there may not be a change, and what's going to happen with them. I have to look at it through their prism. They've got families to feed. They've got kids to take care of. They've got bills to pay. The last thing that I want to do, and I apply my military background into this, the last thing that I want to do is put somebody up on eggshells and make them feel nervous. So I've got to get those waters calm. I don't know what else to say about that. There is not a deputy or a corrections officer over there that has anything to worry about. If you hate your job right now, and if I get elected, I'm going to do everything I can to hopefully make you like your job. If you love your job right now, you're probably going to like it more.
I would say it's a very commonplace thing for administrative changes to happen when anyone changes or takes a political office. In fact, one might say that's what the voters would want.
Correct. Because
they want people that are aligning with the viewpoints of the person they voted for. Mm-hmm. So administratively, you're saying that some changes will happen. I shouldn't say a lot, but some changes will happen. But on the staff department list for corrections officers and deputies out there, they don't have anything to worry about.
There's not going to be any changes in that regard. Any operational changes would be just that. They would be operational. They would not be punitive. And please keep in mind, too, that some of these changes are really going to open up the doors for more opportunities. And whether it's training, whether it's broadening assignments, a whole host of things that I hope to get into.
So as we roll along in this now, we've covered where this started, and it's a tough place to cover. It's a tough thing to speak about where this all started because of I don't want to use the word tragic, but sensitive and sad incident that this all started around, and has so forth, or since then has been dealt with. But as we move along, we get into the timeline now where we're at, and it starts here from what you've given me is October 15th of 2019. Mm-hmm. Tony Kendall receives a 4-page prosecutor's summary from BCI, but he's not the special prosecutor, is what you have here in the notes. So walk us through the beginning of that.
You'd have to understand that this entire investigation, again, was started actually back in August of 2018. It was never a legitimate investigation. It was an investigation designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that was to keep me from running if I decided to run. Now, they didn't know at the time that I was going to run. They didn't know what I was going to do, which plays into the time frames later on. So they started the investigation, but they had to make a narrative here And that narrative was that a friend of mine sent me a picture and I gave to somebody else, and it was posted on Facebook to somehow do something to Dave Duchek.
And like you stated earlier, that's all administrative, policy-wise. There's no legalities there.
Correct. There's
So how do they start an investigation without a legality being there? I mean, how does that work in law enforcement, in the agencies?
Well, if you read the reports, and I've read all of the reports, there was a question by the former Piqua police chief, who was also a very good friend of Kendall and Duchek. And you can tell by reading the BCI reports that when they went down the list of the 33 people, they just happened to stop on the one person that was associated with me. And that's when it started. And so they had to backfill the narrative. They had to create this narrative in case they needed to use it down the road.
So out of those 33 people, was there only one of your friends on that list being out of Tip City?
Well, I actually had some other friends that was on that list. I know everybody on that list.
Did they ask them for any of their messages with you, or if you had texted them recently, or was it, like you said earlier, just between you and Mark on that?
Well, it's funny you would ask that. You know, they never asked anybody until about a month ago, within the last 45 days. And somebody at the Tip City Police Department decided they would send these 33 people an email on the Spillman system, no doubt, and ask them if they happened to have maybe taken a picture of this and maybe happened to share it with anybody. Now stop and think what that means. Would you not want to do that during the investigation?
Seems like something they would want to cover during
Sure.
investigation.
Sure.
Do you think it was just missed, or do you think it was a purposeful?
Well, no, it was intentional.
It was intentional that they
Correct.
glossed over that.
Correct. And I guess the proof is in the documents. It wasn't important then because it didn't fit in their narrative. Why would they do it now?
Because now they're trying to maybe revisit it.
Sure.
Push it forward.
Revisit. Yep.
Because they thought, and I stage my questions here based off of who's in the studio with me at the time. I like to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I like to play a little bit on their side just to make sure that we are covering everyone's thought process on this. But they were thinking at the time that March 17th, that's the day that we got to get you by, from what you're saying.
Correct.
That's your opposition, March 17th. Do you think that this whole ordeal of the voting day being changed threw them off guard?
No, by the time the date was changed on the evening of the 16th, these actions had already been taken. They knew that this vote was going to go on March 17th, and doing some backwards planning, they knew that they needed to get information in the paper, or they needed to get somebody indicted and still get it in the paper, and tie their investigation, their witch hunt, to me.
So the next question would be then, this is not something that they foresaw. So now they're in the aftermath of what they thought originally was going to be the end of the election, and they're still continuing this. I mean, they're still having to deal with this after the fact.
Correct.
Because they thought they weren't going to have to worry anything after March 17th. It wouldn't matter because the decision would be made.
Well, they didn't think they'd have to worry anything off January 23rd, which is when the grand jury was. But the grand jury didn't go well for them. And when you understand, too, that you can indict a ham sandwich at a grand jury, and they presented this case, and again, after $500,000, 19 months, the Attorney General's office, a special prosecutor, a county prosecutor, this one over here, a couple people in his office, the sheriff's office, the Tip City Police Department, all getting in on this, you'd think something could have happened out of that. But nothing did. So on January 23rd, when they couldn't indict my friend to get to me, and you have to understand, he was never the target in this, I was. When they couldn't get to him and they couldn't indict him, they had to go to their plan B, which is where they went into complete meltdown mode. They had to get something out in the paper. They had to get this out somehow. They had to somehow tie this situation to me, and that's what they did.
And that brings us to today, to this interview, to the recent events. So you made a video, was it around last week, week before, somewhere in that timeline? And you, in that video, about halfway through, A couple weeks back, I remember watching it, and I grabbed some sound bites from it. It was going to be something to play on the show that was newsworthy. But I held off on it because I figured there might be more to this. There might be more to this story. There might be more sides, and we've definitely gotten a lot more information since your original video. But the issue is now a local reporter was called out, one that we referenced many times on this show due to a lot of our articles coming from Miami Valley Today, Troy Daily News. Melanie Yingst, I believe she's been with Troy Daily News since 2008, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there. So she's been at this for a while. Now, her side of the story, to kind of fill people in, is that she files a public records request for the information, and she gets an unredacted report. Was, I guess, one of her two stories, that she gets an unredacted report. Is it commonplace for law enforcement to give reporters unredacted reports that in that timeline of investigations?
No, it's not common at all. It's a crime, as a matter of fact.
Because the problem with this particular report is that it listed Social Security numbers. It listed private information not publicly available, protected under about 4 different laws that it lists when you are given one of these reports. So when she was given one of these reports, it was at the bottom there that these items can't be shared. Now, to their credit, the Troy Daily News did not share any of that information in their article. But there was information in there, such as the names of individuals, that were not released in the redacted report, which you showed in your video. So where does this start? Because I know this is kind of the side that I was not filled in on because I couldn't monitor every Facebook post or comment that's come out. But there have been people posting this stuff to Facebook, the unredacted reports to their personal accounts. Where did they get this? I mean, how is that possible?
Again, you'd have to understand that there were 2 sets of reports that was provided that were both unredacted. One was to Tony Kendall back on October 15th, 2019. That was a report called Prosecutor's Summary. The other one was the full unredacted BCI report that was provided to the Deputy Police Chief of the Tipp City Police Department, not until January the 28th. Prior to, it was in February, these unredacted reports started showing up on social media, and the people that posted these reports has got direct ties to the Miami County Sheriff's Office and the Miami County Prosecutor's Office. One person that posted it is a brother to somebody that works over there. The other 2 has long-term ties with Dave Duchek and Tony Kendall. Long-term ties, documented ties. And somehow, these 3 people gets these unredacted reports. And then they take them and they post them on social media. Now stop and consider that my friend and me just went through 19 months of hell over a picture that they said that somebody took that they still can't prove anything on to this day, that never happened to begin with. But yet they do this.
So I want to jump into some devil's advocacy here. Since I've been in media for 10 years, I have a different take on media. I'm not a huge fan of terrestrial or print and all that, but they all do serve their purpose. So as a reporter, let's go with the story right now that she received this from the government. She receives this copy through official chain, and she's landed with a unredacted copy. That would be a legal issue with the people who gave it to her, correct? I mean, she wouldn't be at fault for that had they given that to her.
The bigger legality here is who gave it to her.
Sure.
The bigger problem is she wasn't truthful about it.
Because that seems to be the issue, because when this was first breaking, her response was a picture of emails that she had sent, a correspondence of her requesting the public records request, which I have right here, just the beginning part. And this is what she posted over to her Facebook page. because you had mentioned her name in the Facebook video that you posted. It says, I am requesting an opportunity to inspect or obtain copies of public records that pertain to a Piqua Police Department investigation regarding how Spielman screenshots of the arrest of Miami County Sheriff Dave Duchek's wife on August 7th of 2018 was obtained. And then she goes on in there to finish out the rest of her request. Then she writes a January 31st article, which has information in it, none of the private information, but still has redacted information in it from the redacted copy that you showed in your Facebook video. So that's January 31st. We're all thinking, okay, here's the other side of the story. She got it through an official chain. But that immediately triggered everyone's mind. Well, why would they give an official document like that that's supposed to be redacted? But then you posted in your video, come to find out, she did not open the requested document until February 4th.
She didn't open up the documents actually until February 18th.
18th.
She received them on the 4th. The reason we know that she didn't even open them up is the way that you receive these types of files from the Ohio Attorney General's office is through a separate email, and it's got a password, and when they send you this stuff, it's like a zip file, but they send you a password. You've got so much time to open it up, and she didn't open up that file because the minute you open up that file, it sends a link back to the Ohio Attorney General's office that you just opened it up. So she requested on the 16th. She does the article on January 31st. She actually gets the documents not until February 4th and never even looks at them until February 18th.
And that's the story that she presented to everyone.
Correct.
In the hypothetical world, just so people, because I feel like a lot of people are probably going to come after you for, to be blunt, personal about it, and specifically calling out the reporter by name. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people are going to view that as you just going after the media, people trying to report on you and shut their voice out. From what I can offer from my perspective is the media can report on stuff that is leaked. It does happen all the time, but usually it's not leaked directly to the media. Mm-hmm. Someone else posts it. They're usually the subject of the legal investigation. But by then, once it's out in the public, people are going to report on it and share things. But in this case, what you're alleging here is that someone from that department that received the unredacted copy directly gave her a copy of it to report on by January 31st.
Correct.
And that's kind of where the issue lies here, is did she knowingly post that? Did she knowingly take a document that she knew she should not have eyes on, and then post information from that was redacted?
I'll let her answer that.
That's a fair point.
I will say this. If that were the case, why did she post the public records request on Facebook dated January 16th?
Because the story has changed now, according to you. The story has changed of her story.
Correct.
And what is the second story? Because she's got two here, according to you.
Correct.
So what's the second story?
It's not a story. Prosecutor Tony Kendall gave her that report, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so that's what you're putting out here is that Tony Kendall gave her the report, because how many people have access to this unredacted report?
Nobody. Try doing a public records request for it, see if you'll get it.
I wouldn't imagine I could. And
No.
You've provided the unredacted or the redacted copy.
Correct. I've tried to get the unredacted. They won't give those to me because, according to the four exceptions here, they can't give you a report that's got Social Security numbers in it, law enforcement, EMS, personal, residential, and family information, uncharged suspects, redacted information, or grand jury records.
Do any of those exceptions apply to the reporter?
No.
Okay. So that's her story, and we would love to hear it directly from her.
I will add something here that I feel is important. I'm not attacking anybody. I don't have any plans to attack anybody. I have nothing personal against uh, Miss Yingst or any reporter for that matter. Stop and consider what the necessity is for our media is in this country and how important they are. I want to have a good working relationship with anybody in the media. That is very important. Conversely, any reporters also want to have a good working relationship with the people that they get information from and their sources. That is also very important because at the end of the day, when the media does their job, politicians and people in public office should really kind of fear them just a little bit because they should be the gatekeepers for the public. That is their job.
I think it's very important that they ask pressing questions.
Sure.
One of my gripes, and this is not directly to local media, is media in general, where it shifted. It used to be, they would, if you had integrity in it, you would report both sides with equal time, per se. I feel a lot of people are looking for the news story. They're looking for the clicks. But I do want to make it clear to our listeners here that we did reach out for comment from the reporter. We received comment back from the reporter, but the reporter in question here, Yingst, is not willing at this time to make a public comment other than what she's already put out. I believe they're working on an editorial. The last word that we've publicly known from her is that she's working on an editorial to address this situation. Mm-hmm. There's supposedly more details than the work, and I would love to hear them as much as anyone else would at the time. So, but right now, we reached out to you as well here on the show, and you were willing to comment here. Has anyone reached out to you about the matter? Have you reached out to media people? Has the reporters of Miami Valley Today reached out to you?
They have not reached out to me. I have sent press releases to several media outlets, and they haven't printed any of this. And they may be smart for not printing any of it right now, because I think if I was in their shoes, understanding that this is a political race going on up here, how heated it is, they may feel that it's better just to hold off on some things. And I respect that. Maybe the question or the word of the day here is transparency. You've got a couple guys over in that building over there that purport that they're transparent in how they do their jobs. The problem lies there. The problem really doesn't lie with the media so much. I hate it that this happened. I have nothing personal against, like I said, Miss Yingst. I don't want anything bad to happen to her. But I'm not the one that put this stuff in the paper. I'm not the one that made the phone calls. I'm not the one that put this stuff out on social media. They did.
What are the consequences of actions like that, of sharing unredacted information?
Well, when you understand that this goes out on the World Wide Web and you're talking about law enforcement officers, and then you understand that these reports were given to 3 other people that have them, and who knows who they shared them with, you can have national, international problems.
Because at the bottom of these documents, of the unredacted document, it states that it's for department eyes only, and that department can choose who sees it, but the department that the documents were given to can choose who sees it within that department, who they feel is necessary in the department.
In the department.
And you've highlighted that on multiple occasions throughout these documents. So, just to clarify, does a reporter fall within that exception?
She's not within the department.
Okay. So that's what we're trying to do here is kind of air these things out and give both sides. And, we didn't have Reese up here to do an interview one way or the other. We had him up here for him to explain his side of things and walk us through the timeline. And we'd be willing to afford anyone else that opportunity as well. But I think, just from a media perspective, maybe they just want to break the story on their end. This directly involves one of their reporters. They want to get the editorial out there for the views. They want to be the ones to break it. Maybe our show isn't the place that they want to break it on. We're hoping that we'll get comment on this in the future, because things can pop up, just as when you first announced this, and then you had new information about the opening of the documents, which I want to focus on a little bit more. So she receives this as she has communications with Attorney General Dave Yost. And she says she's having trouble opening the file, is what she asked him, if I believe, or finding it or opening it.
Correct.
And she sent that email off way after the January 31st article.
Correct.
And to be fair to the TDN and MVT, they did not publish any of the information as far as Social Security numbers or whatnot, and she was clear about that.
Correct. That is true. They did not publish any personally identifiable information, nor do I think they ever would think about doing anything like that.
And again, your issue here specifically is the fact that someone gave her documents of redacted information that should have been redacted. It has nothing to do with her reporting on the matter or whatnot. It just has to do with the fact that legally that shouldn't happen and can't be allowed to happen.
Especially when you understand that for 19 months they went after me and somebody else for doing something that they tried to, they tried to paint a picture that that's what we did again, but they do this.
Mm-hmm. It sounds to me, from an observation, that there's some in-house stuff in our local reporting offices that needs to be addressed as far as what their role as a community paper is.
They may have some things to address. I'm going to address things from my end as we move forward, win or lose. I want to add something here that I think is very fair, and I won't go into any details about it, but I'm very aware that there was some discussions out at the Miami Valley today about another issue involving me, and they made a decision to not try to rake me over the coals because it was a very unfair thing to do. And I appreciate what they did because it was unfair. Now, the people that wanted them to rake me over the coals was the two that sits over in that building by the name of Duchek and Kendall. But they didn't do it. They stood up, and I appreciate it. I don't think they did it for me. They just did it because it's the right thing to do, and they do have values and ethics. And again, our local news media is full of good people. There's no conspiracy here. There's no crooks here. I think what we have is a single person that is very close with these guys, and to the extent that they could, I think they've lassoed some people into their ring.
Is that single person a name that you're willing to call out, or do you just want to leave it at that?
I'm just going to leave it at that for right now.
Okay, that's fair enough. So it's not a mass thing. It's not like all of Miami Valley today wants you to not be the sheriff.
No, not at all. There's good people.
I wanted to bring you up here so that people could clarify, or that you could clarify with people, in your words, about why you mentioned that reporter. And I wanted them to get an understanding of where you're coming from at this.
It was her report. It was her article. She's the one that was provided the information. Had it been somebody else, it would have been the other person. It's just as simple as that. There's no gray area here for me. It's just black and white.
Okay.
And I think the public wants that information as well.
So if legal action was to be taken on this matter, who bears legal responsibility here? The people who gave her the documents, the reporter, or both?
We'll find out.
Okay.
I don't want to...
Ever developing situation?
Yeah, it is. And we've requested an official criminal investigation through the Ohio Attorney General's office. And, we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going on. They're going to conduct an investigation, probably. When they get to it, I don't know. It's not going to be any time soon.
Well, I do hope to hear from MVT or the reporter specifically. Again, I did mention I've heard from her just a little bit regarding this, and we actually reached out to her first on this matter. She was the first person that I emailed on this matter because it was her name directly mentioned, and I wanted to get her side of the story on it. And then, as a practice on this show, I like to reach out to the other side as well and make sure that they have the same amount of opportunity, because we just mediate here and provide a vessel for community topics that might go under the rug, that might be a little too sensitive for some people to touch. That's what we're here for, to bring the guest up and have them explain it on their side. So to kind of just go over the timeline one more time before we move into some other topics here. January 29th, Yingst makes public records request to Tip City PD for employment records of Basie and adds that Sergeant Basie has been named in a BCI investigation regarding records involving the arrest of Sherry Duchek, August 8th of 2018. Then the 31st, she publishes an article. So she has 2 days there to get those records from the Tip City Department. So she's filed, from what it appears here, 2 public records requests, one from, I believe, Steve Irwin, and then she requested one from the Tip City Police Department as well, according to this timeline here.
Correct.
Is it possible that the Tip City PD, did she get that? I'm not sure if she got that public records request granted to her for that information.
The public records request that she made was essentially for the personnel jacket of the officer. But in the public records request, strangely enough, she somehow ties his employment records in with this investigation. When you understand that that request was done on January 29th and her article was done on January 31st, who do you suppose gave her the second report or made sure that she got it?
It seems like a quick turnaround time, 29th to the 31st. Every time I've done a public records request, it can take a day or two, depends on the time. It's possible. I don't know here as far as January 29th if that was a weekend or not, because usually they don't get those out to you on Saturdays and Sundays. So I don't know. But your issue here is the information listed, which was Mark Basie's name, was technically the one that was supposed to be redacted in the article, correct?
Correct, amongst other things. And again, the unredacted reports that was provided to their other associates to put out on social media had all that information in it, to include my social security number, my home address, phone numbers. And we've seen those on social media. We captured them. We have them. And so those reports were put out there in their entirety. That's real troubling.
So there's no way from the Tip City public records request that she got Mark Basie's name, put 2 to 2 together. I mean, because that's the issue there, is that she got this unredacted report and there's information in there, and that triggered in your mind, wait a second, this is supposed to be redacted. How does she have this?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, her claim was that they were sent to her. So anything in the Tip City Department public records request, do you believe could have been put into her article, and that might be where the I don't, not disagreement, but issue is?
In order for her to do that January 31st article, she had 2 very important pieces of information. She had Kendall's prosecutor's summary that was dated October 15th, but she couldn't go off that summary. He knew that. And then on the 29th, she makes this request, but it was just the day before that Tip City received the full unredacted report. Now, what happened there? I'll leave that up to them too. I know what happened, but we'll see. We'll see who says what.
Chief Greg Atkins of Tip City gets the report.
Correct.
1 day before she files for the public records request.
Strange, huh?
He now has the unredacted copy. Then she goes there and files for a public records request.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, January 31st, she's name-dropping names that should be redacted.
Correct. And when you read her entire article, there is no way she could do that article without those 2 documents.
I think that makes it clear. I just wanted to make sure that everyone listening has a chance to soak all that in and kind of see the timeline there. And then it progresses to, she sends emails off to Dave Yost's office about she can't open the file, and she's having trouble finding it. So February 4th, BCI sends an email to BCI Irwin stating that she was getting ready to send records requests to Yingst. So Schuff from the BCI department emails Irwin out of the BCI department and says they're getting ready to send off the records to Yingst. Now, February 4th, Irwin approves records to be sent The records get sent to Yingst in a secure file. February 5th, she sends an email to BCI saying that she has not been able to open the file and or she cannot find the file. February 5th, he sends a message back stating that he messages Schuff in the BCI department asking Schuff to assist Yingst. Then February 5th, Schuff tells Irwin that she called Yingst, and Yingst is now trying to open files on her work computer. On February 18th, return receipt from Melanie Yingst to BCI, Schuff advising she had received the file. I believe there was an email in there, and I saw it, where she emailed Dave Yost, the office, I should say, the BCI. I mean, I don't know if it was him. I don't believe it was him directly, but needing help opening the document way after the article was wrote. But that was her response on Facebook, which was just the email. And when I saw that, I really did think that's not proof. I mean, that was genuinely, I think most people saw her post as, that's not proof of you sending an email. We don't have any of the emails back.
Correct.
So I can't wait, honestly, to hear her response on this and see where we're going from there on this whole matter. But I'm sure you're just ready to be done with the whole thing. Put it in the past.
Well, I do. This has been negative, and when I framed this entire campaign out the last time and this time, I talked and promised a lot of my family members, all of my family, and all of my friends that the way I was going to do this campaign, somewhat from a military perspective, frame this out where if you're going to talk to somebody, tell them where you see the agency, tell them where you want to take it, what your plan is for getting it there. Talk to them about what your initiatives are, what you think is important. You're going to have to inform people about your qualifications, your background. Philosophically, you're going to have to tell people where you stand on social issues that really has nothing to do with law enforcement. You need to try to do all that without going negative and jumping down into this slime pit that we're in now. What really bothers me about this, Kyle, is that here we are in Miami County, Ohio, and we have right here in good old Miami County, Troy, we have our own version of James Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and Hillary Clinton running this. And this isn't what people want to hear about. This is not what the voter wants to hear about. The voter wants to hear about, hey, Paul, you say you want to be sheriff. Well, tell me what it is that you're going to do for me. They want to hear what you're going to do about the courts, the jails, the drugs, the human trafficking, the addiction, what you're going to do to increase personnel on the road, how you're going to interact with them. And then you got to stop and think about what people expect out of their sheriff and their sheriff's office. They want you to just do your job and then go away. Do your job and go away.
It's a pretty simple answer. I mean, that's what most people I would think would expect from law enforcement.
Correct. And that's what our law enforcement officers here in Miami County do. We've got so many good cops here in this county.
I will say I've never had any major run-ins or issues per se with them directly. I mean, everyone always has differences of how things should be ran, but I think we do live in a pretty nice area as far as that goes. I think we have a lot of competent people on our roads patrolling it.
We do, and we're very fortunate. These men and women take their job seriously. It's a dangerous job, but they need help. And, you know, I've been all over the world, and this is home to me. This is home. Miami County, 105,000 people. It's pretty much a rural county, a lot of farmland. Small villages and towns. We got Piqua, Troy, Tip City. We're a suburb of Dayton. What's there to not like here? This county's full of good people.
Troy's in a unique spot, too, because it's pretty much 20 minutes from everything. 20 minutes, a little bit longer over to Greenville, but 20 minutes Dayton, 20 minutes to Sydney. Mm-hmm. You know, if you want to go north-south, it's pretty much 20 minutes to Huber Heights. You know, there's a lot of great access roads that run through Troy. It's a huge responsibility to patrol all of them, too, I would think.
Correct. And that's a dangerous part, especially for our deputies. Even in Troy, Tip, and Piqua, and Covington and West Milton, there's only one or two guys out, especially in the villages. And so they rely on backup from the county. Well, when you've got only maybe 4 deputies working in the county, this is a huge county to have to cover. So we've got our guys going to domestics and alarms by themselves. Sometimes they get there, their backup may be 5-10 minutes away. We got to do better in that area, and safety has got to be put up on the shelf here, and we got to fine tune it. And that comes to relationships with these other agencies. Troy Tip, Piqua, all these guys are good.
Well, I want to get more into questions like that here in just a second. And I think the final thing that we have to do to kind of wrap this up, and this was a quick synopsis because, to be honest, you've been very open about this on your social media. You've made around 12, 13-minute videos on these topics, laying out clearly everything here. If you want the information directly from my guest, Paul Reese here, you can go over to this Facebook page, which would be Paul Reese for Miami County Sheriff.
Yes.
And you can directly see the dozens of minutes of content that he's put out regarding these matters. But I wanted to bring him up here to, kind of directly question him on these things, and for our listeners as well. So I'll briefly run over the last few things here that I was kind of interested in. The other main issues we've had with this, putting the reporter aside, is individual users of Facebook posting the unredacted copies of this onto social media. And I kind of have a personal tie-in to this to talk about, and before I ask your opinion on it. We started the group Troy, Ohio Citizens 2.0 a while back, maybe a month or two ago. And it's been a great success so far, a lot of people joining, and it's just a platform for citizens to come and speak uncensored. My only stipulations there are that it follows Facebook terms of service, the platform to which we are hosted on, and that it does not do anything illegal in nature as far as doxing someone's private information. I can't say that those photos were posted, but there was the audio interviews posted on there, and I was approached by a concerned individual that those were illegal in nature and should be removed from the Facebook page. In that particular case, I was concerned, A, to get the page into a legal matter or the group into a legal matter. Where does the legal responsibility fall in that kind of a scenario? If something gets out there and now it's being shared around, you can't possibly go after every single person that shares it on their Facebook page. Some people might not even know it was unredacted in the first place. But what you've kind of leaned towards here and have provided documents for your case is that people knowingly spread this, connected to this.
Correct.
This was not something that just a random source sent out. These are people who have connections to the very people that they're sharing this stuff about.
Correct.
It's not like the document just appeared, no one knows where it came from. We know exactly where it came from.
Correct.
What were you seeing when these were being posted? I mean, what was going through your head?
I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but knowing the facts and knowing the history of a couple people in that building over there, it didn't surprise me. This isn't the first time this has happened. This happened back in 2016. They did the very same thing. They went after people's phone records. They tried to target other elected officials. They went after them brutally. Excuse me. So this is just a play out of their book. And so it didn't surprise me. I think what I needed to do, and I think that we have, is we tried to compartmentalize what our next step ahead needs to be and not allow this to fog those steps. And so this is why we took our time a little bit. We gathered up our information. We're continuing to do public records requests. We've got more out there, more is coming in, more people stepping forward now because there's a concern about this.
So now you are on the backside of the original investigation into you and into the whole photo off of the Spielman record system. And now we're entering into figuring out what is going on their end, is what you're trying to accomplish here, I would think.
Correct. You know, Kyle, this isn't so much about me. If your listeners would understand, if Kendall and Duchek and others are doing this to me, and I know that they've done it to several other people. They have ruined some people's lives. What have they done to the private citizen who cannot defend themselves, who doesn't have the resources to fight them back, or doesn't have the knowledge to stand up to them?
That's a huge concern when it comes to someone running law enforcement, especially an office as important as the sheriff's office. That's a huge concern to me. Take all the personal stuff and the nastiness out of this whole thing. And the biggest concern to me is, as a citizen, I think the information was carelessly tossed around, albeit probably purposely tossed around, but still carelessly tossed around. The fact that it can happen this way I could see where a lot of people would be alarmed by this.
They should be. They should be, and again, I can't emphasize enough, this isn't the first time. This is not the first time. This is just a pattern of what has been going on.
Sure.
But the common citizen out there, and law enforcement, and the job that we do, officers of the court, prosecutors, law enforcement officers, victim witness, all these people, dispatchers, people are in positions of public trust. When you are dealing with, I will just say this, when you're dealing with a criminal, and you know that they are a criminal, most people can accept that. What the public cannot accept is when the person in public trust is committing these acts, violating their oath of office, abusing the grand jury, abusing the subpoena, abusing any tool that they have to include their own people to keep themselves in office and in power. You have to ask yourself the bigger question, why? Why are they doing this? When we are targeting private citizens and doing this type of stuff, it should alarm everybody. Because this isn't what the taxpayers expect out of people. Again, why are we having this conversation? It's sad. I would much rather be sitting here talking about the Second Amendment. I'd rather be talking about the family, how hard our folks have it in this line of work, about the jails, the courts, the drugs, about anything. But yeah, here we are talking about this.
I think in the eyes of your supporters and in the eyes of voters, it's very important to people because as hard as you may try sometime to run the most positive campaign that you possibly can, it gets tough. It gets tough because issues like this come about and you have to address them. So I feel that you have tried to address them the best that you can in the guise of principles you set up your campaign on, which was to campaign on the issues and on the positivity of the county and what's being done right and the things that need to be changed. And I think a lot of people are looking for that in politics today. I remember back, I was listening to, I believe it was 55 KRC when DeWine was running against Mary Taylor, I believe. And that got very heated too, to the point where they were throwing, and DeWine had ran on the positivity campaign, and that ended up working for him. And she had ran on more or less just going after him. And I remember a line that she said from that interview when the interviewer asked her, what do you say to his response of stopping all of your attack ads? And her response was, what he is saying is he will stop lying about me when I stop telling the truth about him. So sometimes I think maybe voters are looking for candidates that will step to the plate when they need to step to the plate, that will call out people when they need to be called out. So I'm not applying that to either campaign here or saying that's the case, but I think in your case, this will probably bode pretty well for you to get this out there and to defend yourself. Because I think as a sheriff, you're going to have to defend yourself at times, and people are going to wonder how your response will be, because you could have any heated situation arise in our small community in today's world and climate, and they will be looking for someone to defend them in that scenario and address the negativity head on.
Correct. I had to do a lot of soul searching about this. That last video that I put out, I was up to about 3 o'clock that morning, maybe a little bit later, deciding if I wanted to go through with this. And it came back to just answering one simple question. Are you willing to make the tough decision, the tough right decision? And as I said, I think it takes a bigger man to walk away from a confrontation if you can, especially in this line of work. There are times, though, that you can't. They left me absolutely no choice in this. They tried to destroy my family and my friends, and they just about did. Congratulations. But I'm not down, and you haven't beat me down, and I don't back down. And I don't say that from a bragging standpoint. Again, in my soul searching that I had to do, it really come down to this. If I can't stand up to them, and if I can't do the right thing day one, how would the public expect me to defend them when somebody from Washington comes down and wants their guns, or somebody from the state comes down and wants to do A or B? How would my men and women look at me if I can't stand up now? How am I supposed to stand up for them and defend them when somebody's coming at them this way?
Well, let's get into the issues. You are a strong Second Amendment supporter. You believe in Miami County becoming a Second Amendment sanctuary county.
Correct.
How are you going to go about that? Where are you at on that process?
Well, that's a good question. I am a rabid Second Amendment supporter. And as a matter of fact, I have a book by Richard Mack. It's called America's Sheriff. And it's about the constitutionality of this position and of the American sheriff and what his duties and roles really are. In terms of the Second Amendment, though, for the last, 15 years at least, we've been going through this back and forth with Washington, D.C., where the politicians want to take our guns. They want to take our ammo. They want to restrict sales. They want to do gun registration. They want to do all these things. I'm against all that. And there is another candidate running. His name is Joe Gibson, and he's running for county commissioner.
I've seen you two you seem to have kind of a parallel campaign going on. You very cooperate with each other a lot on things, share each other's information on social media.
Correct. Well, and I've known Joe for a while. He's a good man. He's an honest man. And he will do great as a county commissioner because he's a critical independent thinker, like I am. He wouldn't have a problem saying no to me as sheriff, and he would bite right back at me. I think that's what the public expects.
What's the sheriff's role with the county commissioner? How often do you guys interact?
Oh, quite a bit. And because the county commissioners have the entire county budget, and then the county sheriff has the largest piece of that budget. So the county sheriff, he wears and tears on the county commissioners. When you need more money for the jails, you need more money for medical bills. He has the biggest amount of employees. So the sheriff has a big role, and you want to interface and get along with those county commissioners. Miami County's had a history of operating in the blue for years. We've been in phenomenal shape because we've had some really good county commissioners going all the way back to the 90s when I first came on board. Miami County's been in good shape because we've had fiscal conservatives, good county commissioners, and they've done a good job. But in terms of Joe and the Second Amendment, he has sat down several months ago. We sat down, we talked about the Second Amendment, and I give Joe every ounce of credit for this. He actually sat down and drafted a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution that if he was elected and I'm elected, along with the help of the other two county commissioners, hopefully both of them, that we could get this county resolution passed. Now, the resolution's not a law. It is simply a policy stance on where the county leadership and the sheriff stands. So once that resolution would go through, really the onus of carrying that out does fall on the sheriff, because the resolution calls for the sheriff to not enforce any state or federal laws or take any state or federal money that would impede or remove any part of the Second Amendment from the residents of this county. And so it's a promise, it is a policy stance, and you are publicly letting everybody know where you stand on it. And if the sheriff has to put his neck out for this, because it's the sheriff that will have to defend it if the feds come to town, so to speak.
So hypothetically, feds show up at the county of Miami County, the border of Miami County, and let's throw a hot one out there, red flag laws. They're here to enforce them. What does your department do about that?
There's not going to be any red flag, and I oppose anything to do with red flag. When you look at red flag, you have to really look a couple levels down. It absolutely destroys due process in that system. Red flag would allow for your neighbor to look at you and say, hey, Kyle has a gun, and he scared me, and he's got long hair and a beard, and he looked at me wrong. Now, it would be a little bit more in depth from that, but the next thing you know, you're being served paperwork by the city or the county, and the next thing you know, your CCW permit has been revoked, and the next thing you know, you have to go to court, and all you did was get mad about something, and then you have to go get an attorney, and then you have to spend thousands of dollars to be for a defense to defend against something that you were never charged with. How do you go about proving that you're not crazy? How do you go about proving that you're not going to do something down the road? That's a horrible violation of people's constitutional rights.
Technically, isn't that a guilty until proven innocent situation,
Sure
which is reverse of what we're based on?
Sure it is. And we can't do that. And if your listeners would stop and think, especially any of our Second Amendment folks out there, or people that don't even have guns or like guns, what if the government could just say, you look scary, and you said something you shouldn't have said, and we're going to take these rights away from you? What does that do for people?
You bring up a good point there, because I do run a very high risk with maintaining these luscious locks of mine and the beard. I would like to get it trimmed up, but the barber shops are all closed.
I'd like to get a haircut too. I feel like I'm getting ready for Woodstock.
But that is something I think a lot of people have looked into with law enforcement. When they look to law enforcement that guides them, and it's a hot issue right now, is profiling across law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Because when people think of a police officer, they stand for the law. They're unbiased, and they have as if they can just be robotic somehow.
Correct.
It would be nice if that's how it was, if we had a clear way of going about that. But how does your department respond? Let's just put red flag laws aside, and let's put the sanctuary county aside. Just on a normal day, you're being a very pro Second Amendment person. How would your officers respond to a situation where I am open carrying, looking the way I do, and someone calls and says I'm a threat? And let's just throw it out there with as very minimal variables in this as possible. I'm walking up and down the sidewalk for an afternoon walk. Mm-hmm. How does your officers respond when they get to the scene of the call?
You're allowed to open carry and walk up and down the sidewalk. Now, this is where our officers would have to understand, and most law enforcement officers do. Unfortunately, there are some of those radical groups out there that will have somebody do that and then have a bunch of people with cameras videotaping something just to get the officer to come up and basically do an investigation as to what's going on. The question is then posed, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not breaking any laws. Why are you stopping me? Well, because you have a gun. Well, I know. I'm allowed to. Why are you here harassing me? And this is where this thing goes. I'm not a fan of open carry. I don't think it's a good idea, but it's still legal. I think if you're going to carry a gun, you should carry it concealed. And if you're carrying that weapon for protection, you certainly don't want to give a threat a read ahead that you've got a gun.
Because there's two camps of thought there, which is the tactical camp. Mm-hmm. Concealed carry is more tactically viable in a situation.
Correct.
And concealed carry is better on the second side of things, not looking at it from a tactical perspective. You don't want to scare people or alarm people. And if you are truly someone who just wants to go about their day and just wants to carry their gun and express their right to do that, you'll conceal it as to not bother other people who maybe don't agree with you.
Correct.
Now, there's the other camp outside of those two camps, which is on the other side of that, which is do whatever I want. It's my gun. I put it on my hip. I can wear it in my waistband. I can walk around. I can walk in and out of Walmarts or whatever the case is. Because then you get into some serious legalities there with private business versus the private citizen and their constitutional rights. Because I have watched a lot of these videos that you refer to. A lot of them are people looking for money at the end of the day, looking for a lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not well educated on their rights. They're not well educated on police policy. They're not well educated on how officers respond to situations. Because the biggest issue is your officer has been called to the scene. He's been called because there's a man with a gun. He has zero information other than what the caller has given them.
Correct.
And when he gets to that scene, he has to now determine that.
Mm-hmm.
Is he allowed to ask for identification in that scenario?
He can. Now, but this is where it's going to go probably upside down.
Start circling.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to start this circle. If he's a block away from a school, though, does that start making people's awareness level go up? If he's
I could see it.
If he's half a block away, does it go up farther? If he's 100 yards away, does that go up farther?
What's the legal? I believe it's 1,000 feet from a school that you're allowed to have a weapon, something along that line. I was asked this actually. I was asked this once at the Strawberry Festival for reasons, but
I don't want to spout off the wrong number on that.
Sure.
I'd have to look. I don't want to spout off.
I believe I said 500 at the time, and the officer told me 1,000.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say 500, but it may be 1,000. I would have to look.
I believe it was because if I remember at the time, I was over at the stadium getting donuts for the festival. The festival is an open carry scenario. You can publicly walk around through the Festival of Troy, the Strawberry Festival, and carry. And I've done that in past years, and I went over to get donuts at the stadium. The school, the actual school is, but the stadium is part of school property.
And it's posted.
Yes.
Yes.
But it's being used in that capacity for the festival, direct access from the festival. There is really nothing stopping anyone. In fact, most people, the common person, would think that is the scenario. Now, the people that approached me, they handled it very well, and they just told me, yeah, this is school property, and you can't. I didn't even think of it at the time, though.
Right.
Those officers could have got me. I technically broke a law in that scenario. They could have done something. They could have arrested me, but they approached it. They asked what I was doing. And then in return, I showed them that I was educated on what I was allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I simply said, understandable, and I will go up to the top of the levee, back to the festival. I'll go around, get 1,000 feet away from there. We came to a mutual agreement there.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people need to approach it that way. But your officer, technically, and it was a TPD at the time, but a sheriff arriving on that situation, he has that power because I've technically broken the law.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I've described how you like to see most scenarios handled?
I think that's the way that most officers, especially here in Miami County, or for that matter, most officers that I know across the country would try to handle it that way. I've been a cop for so many years, and you really have to look at this through the prism of what's going on, especially in that officer's mind as he gets the information, the call from the dispatcher, a man with a gun walking along. His stress and his awareness level absolutely go through the roof because now he's thinking tactical. He's thinking active shooter. He's thinking, this guy could start shooting people. But then he encounters somebody like you. Well, he's got to have the ability then to turn it back down. All along in the back of his mind, he's thinking, what if this guy's going to get the drop on me? He's got a gun. Do I turn my back on him to walk away? It's a tough position for our guys to be in. 9 times out of 10, these guys will handle it great. But at the end of the day, I would hope that anybody listening to this, understanding that people's constitutional rights have to be protected, would also understand that officer wants to go home that night. And when a volatile situation kicks off, you're already maybe 2-3 seconds behind the draw because you're completely reactive in that scenario, and it's scary. There's not a real clear-cut answer for your scenario there, but I will say this: when cops get on the scene, they're constantly assessing 2 things: their safety and the safety of everybody else, and what that threat is or what that perceived threat is.
In that situation, whose safety do you think is more important there? Or is it an equal?
No, the cop will it's a double-edged sword.
Very tough one.
Yeah, because if the bad guy's a bad guy and he starts shooting and he shoots the cop first,
Gotta be ready.
yeah. But
Or it could be, yeah.
especially law enforcement officers that I know, the guys and girls that work here, they're going to put themselves in harm's way.
Yeah.
To protect a crowd of people, to protect kids, to do anything that they would have to do.
I want to say my interaction with them in that particular scenario, maybe 20 seconds at the most, because they happened to be standing there. I entered, they actually let me purchase my donuts and everything, and then I walked out, and they just, wanted to have a quick conversation, and at first, you could tell they were jumpy about it.
Sure.
As I would assume they would be, and it kind of threw them for a loop when I was telling them that I said, I believe it's either 500 or 1,000 feet, but I know I can't be very close to one. And at that point, they did kind of start to lessen themselves. They wanted to try and trip me or catch me on it at first, and then they realized that it was just an honest mistake, and then I just told them, I'll go on my way.
Right.
And it was as simple as that.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people expect from law enforcement out of their community. And from what you've told me, it sounds like you will put the Constitution first on that regard.
The Constitution has to come first, and people's rights have to come first. But at the same time, I want my guys to go home at night, and that is it's a tight wire for these guys and girls to walk sometimes.
I think a fair rebuttal to that from opposing camps would be that citizens want to go home at night as well, and they
Absolutely.
are scared in this heightened culture that we have between police and citizen. That was an ever expanding battle, and it seems to be quicker and quicker by the day as far as public perceptions and relations and whatnot. And a lot of people, they get scared by the fact that a cop has a gun because they're giving them a speeding ticket. Now, obviously, we all know cops have to carry guns. It's not something I'm opposed to at all, by any means. So a lot of departments across the nation maybe take the stance of, we believe in the Constitution, but we believe in your constitutional rights in a court of law. The problem I think a lot of people have is not necessarily that the cops or the sheriffs or the local departments are violating constitutional rights. It's saying we'll sort it out in court later, which is what our court system is for. But if your officer could maybe take, or once if you win, take an extra second to calm situations and keep people from the costly expense of proving their innocence in a court, sometimes that could be perceived better for the community. So I think those are two things that are going to be a challenge. And like you said, 9 out of 10 times, that's how they're handled, moves on. What about the 1/10? What happens in that situation? I mean, what do you do when you find an officer has overstepped in that scenario?
Can you be a little bit more specific on it?
Sure. So say you look at the scenario and you say, wow, he really did violate his rights from a principle standpoint of how an officer can, what the rights the officer has and what rights the citizen has in that situation. And you find that in the department, an officer has done that. What are your next steps in that scenario? Because a big thing that you're focusing on is mental health. Are you going to look into this and sit down with that particular officer and ask, okay, what's going on? This isn't like you, or whatever the case is, and kind of look into it a little bit further?
Well, sure, you've got to have a conversation with these guys, and there are some variables there. Was there a complaint filed? Was anybody hurt? Was somebody thrown in jail? Oftentimes, though, what you find is these guys, they do get in some gray areas, and they've only got just a few seconds sometimes to make a decision. Sometimes fear, and which is common, it should be, can cloud your judgment just a little bit. But at the end of the day, you have to come back and say, okay, this is what you got called on. This is the situation that was presented, and these are the actions that you took. Now, depending on what actions the officer took, it could result in some kind of discipline. It could mean some retraining. As a leader, I would, especially with our younger folks, I sometimes tend to look a little bit more is, do we have a failure to train? And what I mean by that is, this young guy made a mistake. Okay, instead of just putting it on him, did we as leaders have a failure to train this young officer? I think that's more what I'm interested in. And I know that from my experience over here, the Miami County's got a lot of good attorneys and a lot of good prosecutors, and they will bend over backwards to help train your officer to not make those constitutional mistakes.
I think a lot of people's grievances with police departments and sheriff's departments across the nation more or less lies with the people writing the laws, I would think. Because your guys can only, I use guys as a general term, I should say men and women, but they can only go off of what the law is. And they can only, so if most times when people have a grievance with the police department or the sheriff's department, it usually comes down to their grievances, whoever wrote the law that got them in that situation. Obviously, there's no such thing as 100% on everything, especially with how gray some laws are wrote.
Correct. And you have to also ask yourself, was it a violation of law or a violation of department policy?
Because policy is policy and law is law.
Correct. Yes.
Well, that leads me into, if you were to become sheriff, what is your focus as sheriff? What issues are you focusing on that you feel our county, that the sheriff needs to focus on? Maybe other police departments, local police departments can handle different issues. What's going to be the bulk of what you're focused on? And we spoke the other day when you dropped a sign off for me to put up here, and that's an offer to everybody, that these signs are here not only for my personal opinions, but for everyone. So if any candidates or political offices out there have signs that they want to drop off here, they're more than welcome to do that. But I spoke and I told you a story. I won't mention names here, but a sheriff that I've spoken to in the past has told me that one things that he does not agree with on state troopers, the organizations there, is that they view speeding as an organized crime. So what is the things that you're focusing on? How do your officers deal with things like speeding? What's the important issues to you that you believe the sheriff needs to address?
Well, statutorily, the sheriff has two primary responsibilities. I mean, he has many, many responsibilities, but two of those biggest responsibilities is to maintain and operate the jails and to also serve the courts and secure the courts. Those are two huge responsibilities that the sheriff has. So as I look out over all the initiatives and responsibilities that the sheriff has, or the responsibilities and the initiatives that I think that are important, your statutory responsibilities have to come first. So the jail and the courts has got to be up front, and there's a lot of work to do here in those two regards. Initiative-wise, though, some of the things that I feel is very important, a very hotbed topic with the drug problem. And not only the drug problem, but the trafficking issue, the sale, production, distribution of drugs, and the trends of those drugs. We're starting to see the shift from heroin back to methamphetamine. The addiction problem that we're having. We're starting to see some of those people, the heroin overdoses, they're starting to level off a little bit nationwide. But again, methamphetamine is shooting straight up the middle. Human trafficking has been a core initiative that I want to work on and give put some time into. I have some other initiatives, a farming initiative that I want to upload. This would put our deputies in direct contact with our farmers. Nobody knows anything more out in our townships than our farmers, and when our farmers are victimized and vandalized, it can, the results of that can be felt for all over the county, especially if, when this farmer loses a big piece of farm equipment and implements, something like that. He's got crops he's got to take care of. So there's some things there that I want to address and look at.
I would think that'd be a big thing for sheriff's departments, because farmers are outside of city usually, and that's who they call, is the sheriff's department. That's who handles their calls. So it's Something I noticed that I thought that was kind of unique to your campaign is when you threw a line in there about the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that's the bulk of what the sheriff is doing, is
Correct.
dealing with the rural areas of the county.
Correct.
Because any city you're in is going to usually have a police department unless the sheriff's department has absorbed that responsibility. But in scenarios in this county specifically, there's a lot of cities that have their own police departments, and that's going to be the bulk of your
Mm-hmm.
is going out there and patrolling the country areas.
Correct. We have the unincorporated parts of the county, and then any village that does not have full-time law enforcement.
And it's got to be a pretty scary task for law enforcement officers. If you're in the Troy Police Department or Piqua or Tip City, they're usually pretty well-lit areas. When you're doing traffic stops, people are going by all the time. But your men and women out there can get caught up in the mid of pitch black in a cornfield with one person, two people, three people, four people in the car, and they're just one person, and help is however many minutes away.
Yeah. We can have a deputy down on, let's say, Staley Road in Bethel Township at 3 o'clock in the morning with a bunch of people from Heber Heights in a car. His closest backup may be on the north side of Troy or over near West Milton. And so this is where we have to rely on our friends, our brothers and our sisters, from these other jurisdictions, from the State Highway Patrol, to come to our aid and our rescue. We in turn have to do the same thing for them. Relationship building has got to be front and center in how I see things. The sheriff has to be a good facilitator.
So you plan to work very closely with local departments, state departments,
Absolutely.
everyone that you possibly can to make sure that the sheriff operations move as smoothly as possible in Miami County.
Correct. I've had some really good conversations with a couple of our chiefs. I wasn't able to get around to all of them before this COVID-19 situation came up. But we've had some really good conversations. I'll tell you that it's extremely positive. And I think if things go well on the 28th, the public's going to see a lot more of us working together the way that I think the public expects.
Well, it's good to hear, and it's good to know that you are so upfront about this and very quick to response on things, but with plenty of thought. And I hope tonight has given my listeners, your supporters, maybe some of the people who don't support you, some insight into who you are in a more kind of relaxed atmosphere to figure out exactly who is Paul Reese, And on top of that, some of the drama surrounding it. And hopefully it's been cleared up a little bit. I'm sure I couldn't cover everything, and that's why I suggest that you go over to the Facebook page, Paul Reese for Miami County Sheriff, and check out the information that my guest here has presented in video format multiple times. I don't think this will ever truly settle anyone's. I don't think you can convince 100% of the people, but I think it's good in our community, with how unique it can be at times, especially in the Troy area, that people come up and they talk these things out, and we have a dialogue and a back and forth. And then this goes to any political candidate out there to come up here and offer their side of things. If Ducek wanted to come up here, he's got more than, he's got the same amount of airtime.
Mm-hmm.
I afford that to all my guests up here. I afford that to the aforementioned reporter tonight, which we've reached out, and at this time they're not willing to comment. And that's a typical thing you run into in the media, is they won't comment at the time. So we got into a little bit of where you stand on the issues tonight, because I wanted to make sure that at the end of this you had a time to kind of go into detail over how you would be as a sheriff here, to allow our people in the community to know exactly where you stand on the issues, and to give them insight, because you did set up a campaign that you want to run on positivity, and we want to try and honor that here as best as possible and make sure that you have time to talk about those things. So if there's anything else that you want to address that maybe I haven't covered tonight, any topic that's on your mind that you want to go over that we haven't covered, the platform is yours.
Well, Kyle, I appreciate the time that you've provided us. This has been a tough election. I know it's been tough for the other side too. It's been tough for the county, and this will be over with in just a few days, win, lose, or draw. My focus has got to be on the people, and it's going to be on our public. But in order for us to focus on the public, I have to be able to focus on our team. And that's very important. And I've got to be able to bring the team together, to develop leaders, and to earn their respect and their trust as we move ahead. Now, once we have that, this is when we then start moving into the initiatives. A couple things real quick that I really want to highlight. I want to initiate and go back to kind of the community-oriented policing that people used to hear about years ago. We can do that here. We are a public service agency, public safety. We need to go back to those roots. With that, I want to set up and initiate a what's called a CLO, a community liaison officer. It's a very detailed position, but that person or persons is going to be tasked with working with, so many of our groups all throughout the county. Setting up neighborhood watches, setting up meetings, setting up meet and greets, doing the things that the public wants you to do. Engagement, I think, is the big thing. I talked a little bit about the farming initiative. Again, very important, but the farming initiative and the community liaison officer position also rolls into the anti-terrorism officer that I want to set up in the program. Very important. We have to get up on the times, and in between these 3 or 4 programs, they're all going to kind of overlap each other. Key words there are engagement with the public, service safety, but also gathering information about any threats that we may have, whether it's drugs, human trafficking, thefts, robberies, any of that sort of stuff, major crimes. The personnel, I've talked about that, quite a bit. Just in the last, I think, 3 years and 5 months that Duchek has been in office, he's lost 36 corrections officers and 6 deputies and a couple of administrative staff. I have to work on retaining people and keeping them, and I have a plan to do that. I have a plan to basically use some of our corrections folks that want to go on to become a deputy or law enforcement officer to help get them spun up and trained up. I want to keep our corrections staff in place. They have a very important job to do. So there's a lot of things that I want to do, but at the end of the day, this is really more about, I think, leadership and taking care of your people and taking care of police officers or first responders is a lot like taking care of soldiers. That if you train with them, you engage with them, you care about them, you care about their families, you pick them up when they're down, you understand they're going to make a mistake every now and then. At the end of the day, you're going to have a much better quality person, and they're going to go out and do that job for you. So,
well,
thank
Paul,
everybody.
You've got about 8 days or so until the final ballots are in. I think you've got a long week ahead of you and some final challenges. And I think you've definitely ran a very long campaign at this point, and it's all going to pay off here hopefully soon for you. We were going to find out the results as far as all this goes. We'll see how this has affected voting this year. I want to graciously thank you for providing this information here, most of which I believe, if not all of it, just about is public knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And being a prepared guest coming up here, we do appreciate that here on the show, and graciously spending about almost 2 hours with us here and getting into it a little bit and diving into it. I mean, sometimes conversations like these, you can't fit all into a video, and sometimes all the information that you put into a video, you can't fit into this. We'd be here 4 hours or so. Yeah. So I just want to thank you in these times where it's very tough and everyone is trying to avoid the pandemic that's going around, for coming out here and personally speaking with me. And this is an opportunity we afford to everyone here in the community, not only people running for office, but just citizens, businesses, whatever the case is. If there's a story, we're going to talk about it and not shy away from it. And I appreciate you coming up here and providing your opinion on the matter.
Thank you,
and graciously sharing your time with us. So that's Paul Reese from Miami County Sheriff is the Facebook page people can gather that information from. And once again, before we leave, if you just want to tell people how they can get their ballots counted.
Got to get them in. You've only got just a few more days. You can go to the Miami County Board of Elections, download that Form 11A. Takes about 3 minutes to fill it out. You can drop it off in person right across the street in the ballot box. It's a big gray metal box. It's chained outside, and they will send you that ballot. Make sure you get it marked and turned back in immediately.
Paul Reese, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we look forward to any more developments on the campaign, stories, and things here in our community. Thanks so much. We'll be right back after this. I got to put my newsman fedora on. Excuse the brief transmission there or intermission, I should say, as we just heard from our guest, Paul Reese, running for Miami County Sheriff. Great interview, and everyone's welcome to that. To anyone asking questions or wanting to call in, I always afford my guests how they want the interview to go as far as if they want to deal with callers or not. Some people just, it's not the easiest thing to manage. So that's their chance, and we leave the phone lines open after the interview. Okay, now I think we have audio now. I've been rambling to myself here for a second, but we just heard from our guest, Paul Reese, here on The Troy Show about running for Miami County Sheriff and some of the drama that's been running around the community here. And the point of this show is to bring people up of both sides. We afford this to everyone. We afford this to everyone that listens to the show. Citizens, politicians, doesn't matter. They can call in and express their side of things on topics here in the local community that sometimes get swept under the rug, or sometimes are not clarified, or sometimes are sensitive. I take the task upon myself to provide a platform for people to come up here. And all sides are welcome. Anyone mentioned tonight in the interview is welcome to come up here and express their side of the story, are welcome to call the phone lines, which, speaking of the phone lines, I'm sure we had a lot of listeners tonight wondering where the phone lines were at. We have them up. The phone lines are open now, 937-696-7572. The phone lines are yours, your chance to host the show. Sometimes I open them up during interviews, sometimes I don't. I ask the guests beforehand. Believe it or not, fielding a caller in radio is very, I don't know, it's a tough thing to do sometimes. There's a lot to manage while you do it and engage that caller. Sometimes it's simpler for the interview, and especially with the staff that we operate with here, to just kind of focus solely on the interview. I bring people up here for the chance for them to talk. It's their chance to talk. If they want to bring callers in, I let them do that. If they don't, they don't have to. It's not something I mandate here. You're more than welcome after the interview when we open the phone lines up to call in and get your opinion out here on the show. So the phone lines are open, 937-696-7572. You have a full minute, all yours, no kill switch. Say what you want about the issues you've heard tonight. It's your time to do that. But we do have some news to get into here tonight. I think, did we hit 420 members on 420, 2020, and Troy, Ohio Citizens 2.0? Let's go over and find out. Let's log into the group. Say log in, you just click the link. Let's see here. We did it. We got it. 420. We did it. 420 citizens now over in the Troy, Ohio Citizens 2.0 group as of 4/20/2020. Thanks, everyone, for joining and interacting with us over there. That's another place. If you can't get everything you want to say out in the call, then you can go over to Troy, Ohio Citizens 2.0, facebook.com/groups/Troy, Ohio Citizens. You won't get banned or muted over there for expressing your opinion, no matter which side you're on, because there's multiple opinions here in Troy. There's not just my opinion. There's not just my guest's opinion. There are tons of people's opinions out there. And I want it to be known before we did the interview tonight that I reached out to the opposing side in the discussion of the current events. I could not reach out to everyone, but of the current events that are going on. Pretty sure I'm live. Showing that I'm live. We're still working some things out here. Opposing side in the discussion of the current. There we go. Well, the audio sounds better. You might have heard some of it loop back through the board. That's what happens when I play audio through the computer. We've got a lot of big things coming. We've got a lot of renovation. You might notice a few new things behind me here on the camera. We're working on our camera quality, our stream quality. What we're doing here, I believe, is important for the community. It's local online talk radio. It's a place where you can just let your voice be heard. We're live here every Monday at 7 p.m. You can get all the information you need about the show over at thetroyshow.net, our newly launched website that we put together that I had to work on for a while. But we do have that up now if you need a hub of where you can find all the information at. We do have some stories to get into this week. Bring over the stack. Let's see here. Troy's school treasurer says economic forecast is uncertain in these times. A lot of things are uncertain. The Troy City Schools Board of Education met using video technology for its regular meeting on Monday, which was the Zoom platform. Jeff Price, president of the board, Tom Klepst, Jeff Price, treasurer, Chris Piper, superintendent, all of them got in together on Zoom and had a digital meeting of sorts. Price said he doesn't know what to anticipate with how the district will be impacted by local earned income tax and the rise in unemployment. It will take time before we see an impact since things are filed on a quarterly basis. With federal income tax, we may see a slight decline in the July settlement, but more so in the October settlement. Price said local property tax collection may not be impacted, but noted that Franklin County announced it was considering the delay of collection, which other counties may or may not adopt. The board approved a resolution to officially adopt distance learning. There really wasn't legal precedent to have school virtually for months on end, so this is to make sure the legal issues were resolved before they happen. Piper said Chromebooks were distributed to students quickly. Staff and administration are working on how to follow up with students to check in on participation. So for any of you wanting a refund for having to have your kids at your home during this situation, doesn't sound like you'll be getting one. But they are providing them the technology on the flip side of the coin there. Chromebooks are not cheap. So, well, we should have audio going at least. Yeah, we do have audio. Was you just updating your... the feed took a second to load in? Yeah. We have our call screener in training here doing her best to get that graduation certificate after last week. It was no one's particular fault last week. If anything, there were a couple settings I should have checked beforehand as to why the audio got warped. But we are doing everything we can to double check and verify it. But they're providing them with Chromebooks for the school system. They're still doing the e-learning. This is not saying that school is canceled for the whole week. This is not to say that, or the whole year. The in-the-school interaction is canceled, according to DeWine today, for the year. But they're going to be doing e-learning outside of that for the month or so left that they have now. So they'll be probably, I would assume, using our tax dollars for that initiative instead. But they're still unsure about their economic forecast. There's some other stuff in here regarding Honda, distribution plant, property tax, income tax. I won't bore you with the numbers there. We have the show notes. We put them out. Everything that I read here tonight, not including stuff from the interview, but everything that I read here tonight, pulled from the news, is available in our show notes. We put those in the description of every show, so you can click on them. Got them all in caps there. It says show notes. You can go there and grab them. I'm thinking about just posting the direct link to our Facebook page after every show, usually next day. I try to get as much up from the show that night, but sometimes I have to get to it the next day. So the recording's always available right after we do this, after it renders to Facebook. But some of the other stuff that I update usually comes the next day because I run late into this sometimes. Now, this particular article about the school treasurer was from Troy Daily News by Melanie Yingst. So that is the input from the school treasurer. They're a little bit uncertain on these times. I'm sure a lot of people are. It's kind of a weird feeling when government's feeling the heat of needing financial aid. So the board now responds to absentee ballot requests. Another article from the Troy Daily News, tdn/net.com by Melanie Yingst. With the deadline to request an absentee ballot looming, Miami County Board of Election officials shared their advice on how to cast their vote for this year's unprecedented Ohio primary. The primary that was scheduled for March 17th is now being conducted by mail. There will be no in-person voting. The election was extended due to the Spooky 19. Applications for an absentee ballot must be received by the county's Board of Elections before noon Saturday, April 25th. There's that roll your tongue bad terrestrial broadcast habit that I have. I get going so fast. Takes a minute to break that one. But this is something that Paul Reese touched on in the interview about the ballots being received. The director said that the deadline is cutting it close for both the board office and the recipient. She urged voters to submit their own absentee ballot request rather than have the board office send one out due to the mail schedule, which could delay the process. My recommendation to voters is to just write down all that information on a blank piece of paper. We get those every day. As long as it has all the information on them, we'll send a ballot out to them. I don't know if I trust the Miami County Board of Elections to read my handwriting. I would recommend you get a print version if at all possible. Applications that fail to provide a signature is a fatal error and must be remedied by a new application. Well, I'm glad we're leaving up the details of this. I wonder how many will get rejected on that, guys, that the signature was not clear. I mean, who is sitting there with a magnifying glass? Do they have someone there to make sure that this is not copy and paste ballot? I don't know the inner workings of how the board. I mean, they respond to these comments. They put out these articles. I do suggest you go and read this for yourself. She encourages voters to use the drop box in the Miami County Courthouse lobby on the first floor. You do have to do some kind of walking around. They had to move it. There's some construction over at the Courthouse Plaza there as part of their grand project, which we've got some news on here later. Emails of scanned applications are unable to be accepted due to security and identity protocols. So there you go. Emails, scans, things that could replicate, and security protocol. Looks like they're going to try and watch out for that. I sometimes read these articles as I would read them for the first time here on the show. Because when you read an article, you're asking questions as you read. Some people read the news as fact, and that's their right to do so. Some people read the news with skepticism. I try to read it with skepticism and ask myself questions along the way. And usually, you'll find it later in the article. It's not a good thing to read headlines on Facebook or anywhere and just read the headline. If it sounds a little bit odd, click on it. Read into it, assuming it looks like a reputable source. They are encouraged to leave a message with their phone number so a staff member can return their call for those who call the office. She said the most frequent error the public is making is not indicating which ballot they'd like to receive, Republican, Democrat, or issue only. Bruins gestured to a stack of applications 4 inches high on a staff member's desk to show the number of applications that made an error that delays the process. We have been given permission to contact them by phone or email address and take that information over the phone. We are normally not allowed to do that, but because of the time constraints, we do have permission to do that. All those people will receive a call, an email, or letter in the mail depending on what they provided. They are caught up with a large volume of mail, half ballots, half applications. We did have a delay at the beginning because we didn't have the permission to send the ballots out. We had a lot to send out once we were allowed, and we were backlogged. Last week, we caught completely up. Bruin said the office will save money by not having to pay poll workers, but funds will be expended due to the increased need of staff or 7 to 8 employees in the office and postage. The state will reimburse the county, and plans provide additional funds of approximately $46,000 to $65 total to help cover the additional cost for the county, $10,000 of which was received this week. Unofficial results will be available on April 28th. The last day the office can accept absentee ballots is May 8th, as long as they have been postmarked by April 27th or returned in the drop box by 7:30 p.m. April 28th. On May 12th, the Board of Elections will have its official canvass of results, a meeting to review a meeting to review the votes, provisional ballots. They're just going to have a little meeting, making sure everyone voted the right way. Voted. I poke fun. It's going to take a minute for them to recover from the debacle. And then the statistics about people who have voted. They got this, I don't know. Paper ballots, I don't know which one's more. I haven't been able to form a good opinion on if I preferred the old, I shouldn't say old, it was technically new and now old, voting computers that you would have when you go in, the little booths. I think I prefer them. I feel like there's less chance. I mean, you leave it down to either someone hacking the vote or you leave it down to either someone who doesn't like your vote taking a stack of papers. I don't know who these people are that we entrust to count our votes. It's good to know them. It's good to find out. They posted a photo on their page about the ballots coming in, and they had all these boxes laid out on this big white table, those foldable ones you'd find maybe at Sam's Club. And it's some positive message on there, like, so many votes coming in, so everyone's voting. Remember to get out and vote. And I said, don't lose them. It's not a good thing. Hopefully it all goes over well. Hopefully the results are out there. But I will tell you, brace for a lot of lawsuits and contested challenges all across the state because of this one. It is not going to be over on April 28th. It's not going to be over on... What day was that? Well, it's not going to be over. It will definitely not be over until then. As we roll along through here in our closer look section of the show, we've got big changes coming this fall for Troy Junior football. This is according to Troy Daily News by Joshua Brown. When it came to joining a travel league, Troy Junior football had one condition. When I called the SWBL president to say we were interested in joining, I told him we had one stipulation. We'd like to play Piqua in the last game of the year. Troy Junior football president Sean Boyer said. And he said, okay, so we will. The move is just one of many big changes coming to Troy Junior football this fall season as its newly reconstructed board of directors looks to make signing up more attractive to potential players after seeing its number fall in recent years, as well as dealing with complications that have arisen due to the pandemic caused by the Spooky 19. We used to have 6 teams with well over 200 kids, both boys and girls, from 2nd to 6th grade playing football. Then we were down to 5 teams, then 4 teams, and last year we had 3 teams, with a lot of those 5th and 6th graders being first-year players. Troy Junior football has always been within the city of Troy since it was founded in 1961. And it's always been a solid program. I played back in the 1980s before Duke Park, back when we played at the high school baseball field. Last year we had to go out of the city to play a complete schedule, playing teams like West Milton, Covington. The light is bleeding through this paper, in case you were wondering, from my monitor in front of me here. If it were up to me, I really wouldn't have monitors in front of me, but they are vital in running an operation today. So we had a great board with a lot of these guys being on it for 30 years. I just think their time with it was done. Most of these guys resigned, and I took over in February. We reconstructed the whole board with a younger group of guys, most of which are more into the travel part of it, which is what a lot of teams in the area are doing. Well, it's hard to make small things like this big. It's not small to the people who are in the Troy Junior Football League. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of information in here regarding COVID-19. It doesn't really have anything to do with COVID-19, this whole article. Here it does say that hopefully we can get new pants and helmets, depending on their budget. Things like that are kind of what's affecting them. Now it says right here, has the coronavirus affected the Troy Junior football team as well? And the first thing we were worried about when I took over was getting more players. This is coming from Boyer. We had an early sign-up event planned in March. We were going to hold it in the Victory Room at the high school stadium, but that got postponed. We rescheduled it for April, and that got postponed as well. We always had the Strawberry Festival signups too, but now that's been canceled. So that's what's going on in the Troy Junior Football League. Is they're bracing for the impact of their numbers this year due to the coronavirus, the spooky 19. And it kind of looks, it sounds to me like it's maybe been on a downwards trend. I don't say that as a bad thing, but there's bound to be fluctuations in who's joining the interest, etc. for junior football. I think everyone wants to be and focus on high school football. I think that's the most important part. Everyone's focus. But you got to realize to get to high school football, you need these smaller leagues for people to get there. It's an ever expanding ladder in sports until you reach one of the professional leagues, which a lot of people won't, but it's a very integral part of a school system to have teams, community pride. I don't make it to as many of them. I want to follow it a lot closer this year and get out to the games, baseball games. That's one thing I've really been disappointed about was the baseball season this year. And the high school seasons are so much shorter than the national ones, so it's like they can't even make it up, really. It's tough. I was really looking forward to covering sports on this show, just opinionating about what I saw, just talking about it in that sense. I don't need to do reports on it. I'm just saying I was looking forward to talking about who won, the discussion. It's always something lively. A lot of things we're used to have been put on hold. Speaking of which, the Strawberry Festival. Now, we covered this last week. I might have even read this. I think I posted this after last week's show to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beautiful Troy Show. I'll post stuff over there every once in a while if I feel like it pertains to the community. A lot of what I do is here on this show. If you want any information, if you want my thoughts on things, you come here. Every once in a while, I'll sneak a tidbit out there or something on the Troy Show page or Troy Ohio Citizens 2.0. But we posted this article, and this is coming from the distinguished writers at the Miami County Bugle-Caller, which they might become the most distinguished writers at this point. We'll find out how all this drama unfolds. But despite recent news coming from Mario Chetlingham of the Miami County Bugle-Caller, despite recent news that the 2020 Strawberry Festival has been canceled, the city has changed its mind in favor of rescheduling the event for December. Before I go any further, I was inundated with comments when I posted this, and I posted this to the Facebook page with, in parentheses, satire underneath my caption. I think it was the Strawberry Festival, because they were rescheduling it for winter in the satirical article, which is what this is. It's a satirical article. The Miami County Bugle-Caller is our local equivalent of The Onion or Babylon Bee. If you're not familiar with those two sites, they write fake articles for the purpose of humor. And they're very well laid out, and they do look real, but they also point out all the time that they are satirical. And the Bugle-Caller has been going around for a while. I don't know if anyone actually knows who runs that place. I'd love to find out who runs the Bugle-Caller. I think they're hilarious. I think they have a great content, and they have a place on this show anytime that they want. It's hilarious. It's great writing. And some of the lore of being one of these fake writers is the anonymity. Is that the word? Being anonymous. When you write these, it makes them a little funny. More funny, I should say. Can't say more funnier. But people were commenting. It's amazing how people will read a headline and then they'll just throw a comment down. I get about halfway into this thing and I'm thinking, wait a minute. There's no way, first of all, they're rescheduling this in the winter, because that would be ridiculous. That would be funny. And that's what they did here. They took a sad situation of the festival being canceled, and they put out a funny article for all us to laugh at. So I'll do my best here to do them justice, but please go over to MiamiCountyBugleCaller.com or MiamiCountyBC.com. Check it out for yourself. I was just more commenting on the fact that it doesn't matter what you do. You could stamp satire across this whole piece of paper in front of me. I could put satire everywhere. I've put it here in the show notes so that when people are browsing through, they don't think it's an actual article. I've put satire in parentheses, in capital letters. People do not look at that stuff anymore. You need to read these before you comment. Because I'm going to be frank with you, these articles are directed at people like you. Most of the time, the funny part is when you get people to actually believe them. And I could see people saying, well, that's harmful. Well, you do have the ability to research it and look into it. And you do have the ability to read it. And it's quite clear here. It's made up names. Everything's fake about it. Kathy Fiddlehorn of the Discover Troy Initiative, DTI, as they've dubbed it. I mean, just listen to some of this. If you actually read it, the decision to reschedule the event was made due to a large surplus of non-refundable festival materials. December was chosen to conveniently pair the Strawberry Festival with the city's holiday events, allowing locals to get them all out of the way at the same time. It's not canceled, it's just colder, said Kathy Fiddlehorn of the Discover Troy Initiative. And in that, they're making fun or light of all the little different government acronyms and things that get created. The DTI noted that a large sum of the money was spent on materials from the famous strawberry donuts. However, rather than just the traditional recipe, DTI purchased items to spice up these donuts for the first time ever. Due to popular demand from patrons complaining about cold donuts, this year's Strawberry Festival will only contain the hottest donuts on earth. Locals will no longer have to wait in line at 7 a.m. for a hot bite, as these donuts will contain the hottest spices attainable by mankind. Every donut will contain over 350,000 Scoville units, with some reaching upwards of 700,000. Does any of that sound serious to you? Do you think anyone of our downtown bureaucratic departments, do you think they would ever do this? It's hilarious. It's funny. It's poking fun at some of the stuff that maybe we get too serious about sometimes. From my terrestrial days, that was always the going theme. Be funny, be creative, but don't say anything. Sorry, I'm not going to do that. If it's funny, if you can poke a little bit of fun out of it, you weren't allowed to criticize the parking downtown. You weren't allowed to criticize any of this other stuff in the terrestrial days. You just had to do it. You just had to get on there, read paper verbatim that someone else took the time to write. If I just got on here and read these articles word for word and didn't put any opinion to them, why am I here as a showman? As someone trying to operate a platform for everyone to speak? I would much rather you go over and read what they've taken time to do, and we provide that in the show notes. But I'm going to give my take on it and kind of try to be a voice the best I can. As this article from the Troy Daily News so graciously points out, it lists me right here, The Voice. And we've got some nicer cameras on the way, so maybe you can see this, one of these shows. But this was wrote by Melanie Yinks as well. That's what I've been dubbed. But I want to also give the citizens a voice. The Bugle Caller is satire ran by some high school students that are probably ex-high school students that maybe are growing up now. I don't know. It's top tier. Let me tell you that. I know a lot of national writers. I know a lot of journalists from the national scale. I know them from the local levels. I've seen them interact with the bigger upper echelon parody sites like Babylon Bee and The Onion, which have been around forever. This has been a concept on the internet forever, fake articles. In fact, I think The Onion was doing this on their YouTube channel 10 years ago. So these guys come together and they say, well, why can't we have this locally? When's the last time you've read something it made you laugh about your local community? Why can't we have that? Why can't we have everything in this community? That's my goal. Why can't you have the positive people? Why can't you have the negative people? Why can't you have the satirical people? Everyone has a place in the community. And that's what they're doing. They're providing a professional-grade satire site. It's hilarious. My message to the Troy residents is, if you think it sounds too absurd, find out. Click. Come here. We are your weekly recap of Troy news and drama and situations that are going on right here at the Troy Show. Facebook.com/Beautiful Troy Show. I'm not going to shy away from a topic, as a lot of mainstream people would. There's no reason why we can't have professional talk radio, or a talk show, I should say. This isn't radio. Okay, this is not radio. This is talk. This is a show that I do on the internet. This is not radio. I say talk radio. People get what I mean, but this is online. There's nothing here dictating what we can and cannot say. And I pride myself on that. So at the bottom of the article, it says, we have made an apology for some of the comments made in our article. You can view the update here. That was updated 4/15 because these people were going around on various groups, whether it be our citizens group, Troy Ohio Citizens 2.0 here, or some of the various other groups. I think what's happened with the groups, we saw a huge surge of citizens and memberships to all these groups, where it used to be kind of just one Troy Ohio Citizens group. That gentleman's maneuvers have inspired a ton of people to go out and create these groups. Like, why can't we just speak? Why do we have to follow the crafted narrative? That's for the city to do. The city's in charge of the PR message for the corporations coming here. Those two will interact on a level that we'll never interact on. Let's be honest. These videos that are pumped out, PR moves or whatever, the city's taking care of that. They're dealing with that on their side. They shouldn't try to, push, so these are some of the residents we don't like and these are some of the opinions we don't. Please do business here. And push those people to the side. They should be out there saying, this is our community. This is what it is. Do you want to do business here? But they'll handle all that, okay? Poking a little bit of fun at your local community or the authorities that be is not a huge issue. If you do it in a humorous way, in a polite way, and I think we try to do that the best that we can here by allowing everyone to come on here. I don't hold grudges. I don't hold stuff against people. I'm just here to do a show and have fun doing it and give the community a chance to speak. And I think these people here at the Miami County Bugle-Caller are kind of on the same wavelength there. Why can't we poke fun at this? They were the ones that were responsible for the infamous Piqua Mall closing article that went around. Didn't take me long to just read it. This is satire. That's funny. Because why is that place still open? It's a heartfelt place in everyone's, remember the Piqua Mall? That's kind of the big topic around here. Remember the Piqua Mall? Remember the fountain? But malls are not going to exist in that capacity soon enough. And hopefully they're able to do something positive with the property, whatever happens. I have a lot of fond memories of the Piqua Mall. The pretzel place must be relocated. No matter what happens to that mall, at all costs, we must protect the pretzel place located inside the food court. If you have to tear the whole thing down and just leave the shell of the pretzel place, if you have to give them a space free of charge in the city for them to operate out of, we must maintain the pretzel place at the Piqua Mall, no matter what happens. Save the pretzel place. Whatever hashtag you want to invent there, we've got to save that place. That place is one of the only reasons I go to the Piqua Mall anymore. Other than when maybe I need something up there, the opportunity arises. I try to shop local. It's just the mall concept is not as strong as it once was. So in a follow-up article from the Miami County Bugle-Caller, MiamiCountyBC.com, this is from the MCBC staff, April 15th. The Troy High School band wanted us to apologize for calling them stoners. So here's us doing that. There was a couple mentions in the whole Strawberry Festival winter article about kids making the donuts being stoned over there. Which, by the way, happy 420 to anyone out there celebrating. So here you go. Troy, Ohio. After the Miami County Bugle-Caller's reporting on the recent changes to the Troy Strawberry Festival, a select few citizens had specific concerns regarding our reporting and journalistic integrity. Here at the Bugle-Caller, we value our integrity more than anything, so it's important from time to time that we clear the air. Specific concerns were raised by one Troy High School senior music staff member over a comment which read that the band kids are pretty stoned when they make the donuts. The information was included based on real information gathered by our highly qualified field journalists, who definitely hotboxed one Troy High School band member's car with him last February. The student said on the record that getting absolutely cheesed is the only way to survive band camp without going insane. Regardless, we want to make it absolutely clear that the students are not under the influence of marijuana when making donuts for the Troy Strawberry Festival. They are not lighting up doobies or ripping pipes or making gravity bongs out of the donut-making equipment or making their special THC-infused donuts. They would never make a Coke can bowl or bring a dab rig in their car and take hits during their bathroom breaks. nor would members of the Troy High School Band introduce a gateway drug to the underclassmen by any means. We would find it foolish to think that teenagers would ever get stoned before some high school event that they were forced to participate in during the early hours of the morning. Gas mask bongs wouldn't even be usable in a cooking environment, and the fryers likely get so hot you would want to make them take the mask off anyway. And the logistics problems you'd run into trying to make an edible in that environment would make it all but impossible. And to accuse these kids who work day in and day out to entertain their community with the utmost professionalism and dignity, this is not to say no Troy High School marching band members have ever partaken in illicit substances, as we know that would be not true, and as stated before, we value journalistic integrity more than anything. The reality is it's much too difficult to get the really good sticky stuff in Troy. There's simply no way. Yeah, all they sell in Troy is rosebuds and flower buds over at Menke Park. That was a debacle. The reality is it's much too difficult to get the really good sticky stuff here in Troy. There's simply no way the band members could be ripped off their ass as we previously claimed, not with the mids they're selling in Troy, and for this error we truly apologize. We hope you'll continue to support both our organization as well as the Troy High School Band in the coming years, especially in these unprecedented times. Follow the Miami County Bugle Call. And see, they save face at the end. That was something Don Rickles would always do. Whenever he did a bit, he would poke fun. He would get right into it. And at the end of it, he would leave it with, we hope you'll support, we love and pray for you, whatever the case is. And they did that here, and they called it out, and it is absurd. The people, I'm so insulted, our band members would never smoke weed. I know the people who run the band, very nice people, okay? The Troy Marching Band is a very good band. It's a high school band. It's a place for people to learn. I was homeschooled. I have no connection to public schools. I went to a private school 1 year. And there's a lot of social disconnect that I lack there. I'm very honest about that. There's a lot of things I do not know about the inner workings of high schools. But I can tell you right now from the people that I know that have gone to high schools and just from being aware that, see, why can't we poke fun and stuff like that? And it's all made up and there's no names mentioned. They're not calling any one person out. It's just the climate around it. It's like the stoner's dream is to go make donuts. I'd probably be the most focused person in the kitchen. They're not actually breaking a story that we should have to cover up here, but it would be a little uptight for people to, oh, my teenager would never smoke weed. If you say that, your teenager's probably smoking weed. I'll throw that out there, but I thought it was a good rebuttal. Check it out for yourself, MiamiCountyDC.com. And if you don't agree with what they do over there, that's all fine. You don't have to laugh. Comedy is subjective. By no means am I telling you, if you're listening right now, that you have to laugh. You don't have to laugh at what I laugh at. But you have to understand that people are going to write what they want. They're going to poke fun at stuff in the city, like we do here from time to time. But you do need to read into it a little bit. The amount of people that actually thought this was real, no one's trying to fool you with an article like that. I guarantee you. I get a laugh out of watching all the people actually believing it. And I think that fuels them to write more articles. I mean, I don't think they're actually trying to present it as real news. It's quite clear, but it is kind of funny when you get that response. I think their genuine mission is to just make something funny. Now, here's some positive news. I've put a lot of COVID news to the side. I don't want to talk about COVID all the time on the show. If I went through every COVID-19 article and all the different numbers, no one knows the numbers. They're all different no matter where you go. The problem with local media, and I want to give props to Sydney Daily News for this article, and I want to give props to the Sydney Daily. I don't know why that Sydney Daily is reporting this better than anyone I've seen, but they put an article with the headline, Shelby County recovery number doubles overnight. Recovery number. No one's been talking about the recovery number of COVID-19. Whether you think this is a government overreach or you're on board with it, no one's been bringing any positive light into this, not near as much as they bring negative light of COVID-19. Phone number, once again, 937-696-7572 if you want to weigh in. But the SydneyDailyNews.com, appropriately named, by the way, SydneyDailyNews.com. Was TroyDailyNews.com taken? Because having to do TDN-net or TDN- whatever it is. See, I can't even remember. It's up here in the corner every time I pull an article, and I can't remember it. That's just something, I don't know why they went with that decision, but it's easier to say and replicate to people, like TroyShow.net, theTroyShow.net. That's what it's called, .net. So the number of people who have recovered from the coronavirus in Shelby County has doubled overnight. According to the Sydney-Shelby County Health Department's daily update posted on its Facebook page, 12 people have recovered from the virus. Wonder why the WIC department didn't post this update. While 16 have not recovered, the number of recovered patients Monday was 6 people. 6 people have been hospitalized, while 22 have not been hospitalized. No new cases have been reported since Saturday. There are 28 positive cases in the county. Now, the only thing they could have done better with the headline is not use the number doubles overnight. Because a double of what? I mean, double of 1 is what, 2? So you get into it, and it's like, well, there's not that many people, but to those affected, it's sad. It really is. I wish them the best in a full recovery. But it is nice to see that they are getting some good coverage up there for once. Now, here's something that I've wanted to cover all week because I've been walking by it, and I'm forced to walk out into the street and get a closer look at it because of this thing here. We're going to put a counter. I mentioned this earlier. We're going to put a counter up on the whiteboard. We've got a couple counters going on here. We did have to reset the Mike DeWine counter today to 0 since he officially shut the schools down for the rest of the year. And we are 34 days into the Troy state of emergency. Right outside here, this sidewalk, this has got to be dealt with. We are 4 months, almost 5 months. I believe the 17th of May will be 5 months since the infamous EF0 struck the city, which went right over my head. I was in the middle. I was back there, and I used to have this desk in another room. And there's a skylight back there. And I was sitting there on the computer with some friends playing some games, and I had heard a bunch of hail before. I've heard rain before on that skylight. You can't miss it. It's kind of soothing depending on how intense the storm is, but it's just a lot of clanking going on up there. And I'm thinking, okay, a limb, something. Had no idea the weather was going to be like that. No one had any prediction. It was quite obvious. 60-degree day, big cold drop. You would think in January, you'd maybe throw some ears, but it didn't quite throw the ears of certain news outlets. So I'm sitting back there, whatever time that was, and I take my headset, the very one I'm wearing right now, and I take it off to the side like this, and I tell everyone to hold on for a second in the call that I was in. And I yelled out to our call screener in training that was in this particular room at the time. I yelled something along the lines of, what's going on out there? I didn't get a response back, which is unusual, so I came out here, and she had met me halfway and said that she thought we were having a tornado. And I said, that's ridiculous. I said, first of all, it's January. And then the thought process, it was 60 degrees today. That can't be good. And I said, well, no, it's still ridiculous because my mom would have flooded my phone with weather updates. She's usually glued to the TV in those scenarios. In fact, so fascinated at it at times that it gets to be 5 minutes before the thing's supposed to hit. She's like, well, I guess we can't go anywhere now. It's fun. It's fun time. We've had some very interesting tornado experience. I remember going to the Troy Public Library here at one time with my mom, and we were going to go inside to seek shelter because they've got that lower area, and we're just looking at a spiraling cloud above us, and I'm like, are we going to go inside anytime soon? She goes, oh, no, look at the spiral. Isn't that cool? But never anything that put us in danger, but it's just kind of funny when you look back at it. I said, well, she would have called. So I called her. And I instantly, when she picked up the phone, I heard the news center on the TV finally breaking in, and she said, no, it just hit, no warning, get out. So we came down here. In fact, our call screener made the news on Fox 45 a day or two later. I was out making a delivery. They wanted to interview both of us for our experience. I don't really have anything to say. What can I say? It was a tornado, went over my head. I wasn't directly affected by it. I don't have any passionate speech to give. I'll leave that to the people who were affected by it, which there was a gentleman in the corner over here where they're redoing the building up above Ruby's salon there, that was affected. His whole roof came in. The local media did an interview with him as he was standing out there. It was one of the local gentlemen here at the radio station, went out and interviewed him. And he was over there just like, I don't know, lost my house. He was kind of a voice of reason in that. It was quite funny to watch. Go look at it. It's a funny video. He just like finds this guy and he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, my whole house was up there. Oh, this is interview gold. Tell us more. Let me shove this camera in your face. How's your tragedy going? People like that were genuinely affected by this tornado. But we were sitting up here, and by the time we got downstairs, I walked back outside. It was pretty calm. I think this might be the calm before the tornado. It had already gone through. Didn't even know it. I mean, it went right over my head. I did not know it was a tornado. Here's my theory on this. I think it was an EF0 when it touched down at Kroger on that side of town. I think when it got to these buildings after it had swept over the historic district behind us here and caused damage to a lot of people's lives and memories they'd had forever, the straight line winds as these buildings prevented that. Because the downtown was relatively untouched except for the rooftops, and it did affect the roofs that have been probably the least maintained, the buildings that have been the least maintained. It was a pretty good wake-up call for people down here that these buildings need some more renovation, whoever owns them. So I think it was straight line winds there. And then I believe from what they were saying in the report that the most impact was when it touched down on the other side of the downtown over by the river. And you can clearly tell that's just signs of tornado over there. But here it was just brick knocked over and some tree. There was no damage to like the trees downtown or anything like that. So, I mean, I stayed out there for an hour, 2 hours covering it, did a whole live thing on my personal Facebook page. I didn't have the Troy show at the time, and I don't know if I would have gone live or not, but I just kind of walked around for a while. It was a pretty calm scene. I mean, TPD showed up like it was just started yelling at a bunch of drunk people to get back inside because the bar was open and down there. And I mean, these people are all the outdoor drinking laws. When I tell you what, those went out the window so quick. Like, people were still piling out of the bar with beers in their hand. Like, what just happened? And then TPD came rolling up, and that one guy, and he's still wearing one of those 1960s style caps, and started yelling at everybody, get back. It was their big moment. And I started to walk away. I said, wait a minute, I live here. I just walked back in my door. So it was an interesting night, but it affected that building there. And that's why I'm going to start the counting, because that needs to be dealt with. I don't know if the bank owns that building. I don't know if someone owns that building. I don't know if the city has an investment in owning that building. I don't know what's going on there. I would like an answer as to why the sidewalk and those parking spaces, which unfortunately due to the COVID-19 right now, we don't need those parkings. But when we get this thing going back up, those parking spots, and the hazard of bricks falling on people's heads, they've put these 2x4s now at the entrance of each port. You used to be able to just walk straight through by the bail bonds place. Has anyone seen anyone in the bail bonds place recently? I mean, go check in there. I never see anyone in there. And you walked through there to the other side, and you could walk through. Well, then they got tired of people defying our signs. It says closed. Our orange cones, the national bird of Ohio. So they just put a 2x4. Now that's completely stopped everyone. And no one's going through there now. No one's stepping over the barricade. That's not going to happen. Just fix it. They got it tarped off up there. I get people's risk. It shouldn't be, but we are in the lawsuit age now. So I get where the city is concerned that people passing through there could potentially be damaged by a brick. But apparently I have better odds of a tornado going over my head than a brick falling on me. So I should be able to make the decision to walk on that sidewalk whether I want to or not with the full knowledge. They should post a warning sign, overhead hazard, and that should be the end of that. But in the lawsuit age, I get they're doing everything that they can to fix themselves or fix the issue the best that they can right now without lawsuits or anything like that if the unfortunate were to happen. But the building just needs repaired. It's honestly gone through some struggling ownerships. It's a nice building. It's a beautiful building. I've had quite a few ideas of what could go in there, none of which I think the city would like. But whoever buys it or whoever owns it right now, we need to do something here. I don't know if it's an insurance battle or what they're waiting on. I would like just an answer. So until I get an answer, we're going to put the countdown on the board of how many days, almost 5 months now, that sidewalk's been shut down like that. Took them forever just to scrape the brick off the sidewalk that night. I would like an answer. I'll put that out right here on the Troy Show. I want an answer as to why that corner, maybe it's already been put out there, or why this building can't get done and these two can very quickly. So this all leads to the courthouse plaza project shaping up. This is according to the DaytonDailyNews.com by Nancy Bowman. A new look for the Miami County Courthouse Plaza is starting to take shape with the construction of a fountain near Main Street and the initial pouring of concrete and placing of bricks in the plaza area between the 1880s courthouse and the 1970s safety building. Both structures are home to county government operations. The first phase of Plaza project was completed last fall. Lee Construction of Delphos. That company handled demolition of the plaza, including removal of 2 fountains and short steps with bricks that had come loose over time, causing tripping hazards. The first phase final cost was $601,000. The contract was bid for $689,000. So it sounds like they came under budget on that one, for once. Now, the second phase was contracted with Outdoor Enterprise of Castown for around $3 million. Work continued throughout the winter months. The county worked with architects of Minster on project design. Weekly update meetings are held, including the contractor, project manager, commissioner, and Chris Johnson, county operations and facilities director. The list goes on. I am pleased to have a contractor performing the work who takes the schedule serious, is working every day possible. We were told there might be some trying times getting the materials due to the COVID-19 shutdown. They are trying their best to stay on schedule. With this whole COVID thing, I'll give people a pass. $3 million. Let me see here. I know the big argument was loose bricks, which I don't think there were a lot of loose bricks, but they were overly concerned about tripping hazards. It is possible. The government is now telling me, I'm getting official word through the headphones, that it is possible to trip outside. So be mindful that there might be loose objects in your path and you could trip. But I understand it's their duty to maintain it, and I don't want people to get hurt. I'm just saying the cost, I wasn't completely sold on that. I was not sold on the redesign, but now that I've seen it take shape, now that I've seen they're using the old pillars from the 2 original fountains, which many people have photos of, and enjoyed that little spot, I wasn't a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of the wall that we've all walked on getting torn down. But now that I've seen the brick come up, now that I've seen the pillars erected for the fountain in front, it does look nice. It does look centered. I am not going to gripe about it. I'm not going to give them a hard time over their decision to do this. Obviously, someone wanted to make a claim for themselves in the political office, and I've never driven by there and said, wow, I really think that fountain just needs to be right in the middle of the courthouse. Never bothered me. Never bothered me. So someone, I don't know who it is that got bothered by it. Apparently they were bothered by the fountains being off-centered, but they could care less that the building is 2 different colors. I don't know if historically it's that way for a reason, like the Washington Monument, because it was built in 2 different periods and they had to stop in the middle of the Civil War. I was down there February 27th, standing at the base of that statue. Amazing what they could accomplish. But our courthouse, they couldn't dig up an extra $3 million for paint on the outside. And paint's not cheap, don't get me wrong. But they painted the top. I don't know if it's a two-faced thing. I don't know if there's a reason why the top is painted as opposed to the bottom. There could be historical reasons for that. There could be architectural reasons for that. I'm not sure. But as a joke, as a gag, I don't know where. Maybe they could come up with some money to paint the other half of it. But I do like the new fountain. I think it's pretty nice. Of course, always your thoughts welcome, 937-696-7572, beautifultroyshow@gmail.com. If you're more of a text person, or if you want to continue the conversation further, facebook.com/groups/Troy Ohio Citizens, where you can go directly to other citizens and talk to them about their thoughts on the matter. Can't promise it won't get heated, can't promise it won't be a debate. I'm not there to make those rules or mute and censor people like that. It's not how this ex-radio host works. Well, the Troy Hospital president is talking about COVID-19 and an update with the county commissioners. A pretty good article. There's a lot of detail here. I couldn't even do this article justice if I wanted to. I don't really have an opinion per se on it. We'll have it in the show notes if you want to go take a look at it. But the president of the KHN, Kettering Health Network, with the Board of Miami County Commissioners on Thursday, this is the president of the Troy Hospital, updating the commissioners on Troy Hospital's operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. There's only a few things I want to point out here. He says the Troy Hospital's emergency department has received approximately 48 patients who were suspected of having COVID-19, of whom approximately 6 were positive. He said that was an infection rate of 12.5%, which was larger than the average rate that is around 6%. And he attributed this to Miami County having a larger population of COVID-19 patients. What is this for? Troy Hospital Emergency Department, okay, was 12.5% of what? Said there was an infection rate of 12.5% of what? Of the Troy Hospital? Of all of Kettering hospitals combined? I don't know what he's referring to there. He said that they have an appropriate personal protective equipment, and he explained the precautions that they are taking, such as designated COVID-19 units in order to contain exposure and continue the same level of care. I was told there was a separate entrance over at the Troy Hospital as well for this stuff. They also went over how area hospitals are working together as part of the Greater Dayton Area Hospital Association, the GDAHA, which includes 29 different hospitals over 11 different counties. I was also told that they're shipping all of them to Grandview if they do test positive or have symptoms, or a lot of times they're just telling you, go sit at your house. The hospitals right now are in furloughing, laying employees off. Seen a 40% drop in every area of care since the state's stay-at-home order, probably because the frequent flyers aren't at the emergency room. Smith also said the county government, as well as the cities of Troy and Piqua, were approved to receive funding from FEMA to recover approximately 75% of costs related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, they'll recover them. You and I won't. But it's a good thing. The Troy Kettering Hospital is a good thing, something we've needed in this city for a long time. I'd give a lot of praise to the officials that brought that together. It was a great use. That was a great use of the old Hobart building. I got to watch that demolished when I was working over at Tim Hortons for a while. Speaking of development for the city, I'm sure you'll all be thrilled to hear this. We are getting a brand new bank. Another bank. Why is no one clapping? I thought this would be all the rage, but Greenville Federal Financial Corporation plans to open a new full-service banking center in Troy, Ohio, located on North Market Street in the Sherwood Shopping Center. This will be the second banking center for the city of Troy and the third banking center for Miami County. It is estimated this newest full-service banking center will open in late 2020 or early 2021. We're bringing another bank. I am going to go out on a limb and say it'll be that little building in front of the Sherwood Plaza that used to be the Fifth Third Bank. I think I-Force took a stab at it at one point. I'm thrilled. I don't know about you, but I'm thrilled we're getting another bank in the city. I would love for Dairy Queen to come back, but no, we lost that to a bank, I believe. Now, the Kettering Hospital, that was a little bit of hot news with the mayor this week. So the mayor, I knew this was a bad idea from the start, that she would receive this response. But don't listen to me, and I did not offer my opinion on the matter either, so I think I did a little bit in the last show. So she did this thing. It's a little viral trend going around where people pull up in a hospital or a police department, the public parking area, or fire department with all of their cars, and they go do a cruise in. So you stay in your car. There's no physical contact or spreading of the virus. You keep your windows rolled up. She was very organized about it. She laid these things out to the people on her Facebook post about how this was going to go. She was definitely organized on this matter. She definitely had everything in place to stay within social distancing guidelines, which she seems to be all the rage about. So she was going to have this cruise in at the hospital, and she posted that this would be a wonderful idea for the city of Troy. We should hop on this viral trend that's going around Facebook and pull up, and it's where you honk your horns for about 10 minutes or so, and you flash your four ways, and sometimes the EMS department showed up like they did here in Troy, and they turned their lights on. You don't honk for that long, but you do honk for a little bit, and then about 10 minutes you sit there, you all disperse and go about with your lives. Sounds like a noble cause. They're there to thank the healthcare workers on the front lines. I didn't think it was a great idea because every hospital, now she's got herself into hot water because the Premier supporters of Premier hospitals are upset that she didn't go to the Premier hospital and only went to the Troy Kettering Network Hospital. Well, the reason that she states that she didn't go to the Premier place is not that they didn't offer them the ability for the citizens to show up in the public parking lot and show their support. The mayor made it clear that she was in talks with the people at Premier, and they said that it would not work at this time. We don't know the reasons. We get the typical fluff political thing because there's things behind the scenes they're not able to say or whatever the case is. But she said that's the case. My thought process was you should have that confirmed before you start. Because if you do, there are going to be people in this town that are going to give you that criticism, and you're not going to be able to defend yourself. I mean, you will be able to defend yourself, but you're never going to change their mind on it. It's just going to give them more ammunition. I wouldn't have done the idea, personally, I would not have done it had I did not have both Premier's and Kettering's permission. That hospital is not something to mess around with right now. That is a very big deal for the city of Troy, and as a transitioning new mayor, you need to worry about stuff like that. I had some other personal reasons. I just thought the thing was ridiculous to go do. But, I mean, not everyone's me, okay? Not everyone has the same emotional scale that I have, which is very minimal. A lot of people have a more broad emotional scale, and they want to go show their support, and they feel like they're helping this way. I'm not here to talk bad about those people. I'm not here to get into that. I'm talking about if you didn't have it approved from Premier in the first place, and maybe she'll learn from this, don't favor, because, yeah, you don't want to do that. Now, I think she was upset because she was pointing that fact out to people that she was in talks with Premier. I'm not disagreeing with her. I think she was right for telling people that I was in talks with Premier. And it wouldn't work out at the time. But as a political move, it might have been better just to wait. And who knows? From what she was saying, it is open in the future that they could possibly go do that there at Premier. So she got in a little bit of Facebook hot water with that. It was kind of funny to watch. I don't know. I've learned my lesson when it comes to Facebook, and I try and stay out of things as much as possible. But the mayor was in a little bit of hot water over that over the week because the Premier supporters were upset that the Kettering supporters appeared to get special treatment, but the mayor made it very clear that no, we were in talks with Premier. I don't know if she's produced documents or emails or if she can or if it's even that serious. But things like this do blow up in our little communities, and it's what we have to talk about. It's an issue. We're going to talk about it. Now, the Paul G. Duke Foundation is supporting the Troy Emergency Response Fund. And I got to look for something here to the computer before we move on to the next thing here. So I'll just load that up because we're going to need it here in a second. But the Paul G. Duke Foundation supports the Troy Emergency Response Fund. We're working on getting someone else in here to kind of help with that. I am very good at managing multiple things while I do this, but when you have audio, video, callers, sound bites, news, a bunch of different stuff on the screen to monitor, guests, I mean, I can do it, and I think over time I would probably adapt very well, and everything would be comfortable once I get everything set up in here. But sometimes it does help to have someone else, so I don't have to stop the show like I have had to do so many times. Because I don't like doing that. I do like to bring you into the scene here. I'd like to tell you about the things going on behind the scenes. I like to be very open and honest, and it's just something to talk about, and I'm a talker. So that's kind of the way I do that. But the Paul G. Duke Foundation, to address the impact of the coronavirus epidemic in Miami County. This is according to BravoTroyOhio.com. Bravo, Troy, Ohio, if you don't know, that's like the positive news source for Troy. So if you're a big positive person, you can head on over to BravoTroyOhio.com. To address it, they announced a grant for the Troy Emergency Response Fund. The Troy Emergency Response Fund was created by the Troy Foundation to quickly distribute financial resources to nonprofit organizations serving Troy as well as the Miami County area as they strive to continue and to expand their services for vulnerable individuals and families impacted by the spooky 19 pandemic. If there ever was a critical time for local funding groups to work together, it is now during this unprecedented pandemic crisis, said the Duke Foundation's president, Linda Daniel. Nonprofit organizations desperately need our combined support for their service missions which are being incredibly challenged by exceedingly high service demands, closed facilities and programs, reduced staffing, and canceled fundraising. Did she get the word unprecedented in there? Oh, she was so close. Almost hit all of them. This is a good thing, though, because from what I'm being told and reading here, the emergency response fund that was set up is being overwhelmed, flooded. I think they were looking to give $2,500 out to businesses, $5,000 in exceptional cases. And now they're looking to have to readjust those numbers because I believe in the first 24 hours they got over 50 applications. I think they had about 110,000 in the fund. I mean, you do the math on that. That's starting to kind of dwindle their funds and not going to leave room for the exceptional cases. So the Paul G. Duke Foundation stepping up to the plate here to help out with that. That's time to get into our crime segment as we cover some local crime here in the area. Up first tonight, breaking and entering suspect has been arrested by a deputy on routine patrol. This is coming from tdn-net.com by Samantha Wildo. A Miami County Sheriff's Office deputy arrested a man suspected of breaking and entering into a detached garage while the deputy was on a routine patrol. Miami County Sheriff Dave Duchek reported that at approximately 10 a.m. Friday morning, Deputy Bryce Hodges observed a male subject exiting a detached garage while carrying items on the 8,000 block of North County Road 25A in Spring Creek Township. Hodges, who was on a routine patrol, also noticed a window broken out at an access door to the garage. Hodges further observed the subject drop the items upon seeing the deputy. Hodges made contact with the subject, who was identified as William J. Sparks, Jr., 31 of Piqua. Sparks had an active probation violation warrant out of Miami County Municipal Court. Contact was made with the owner of the garage, who relayed Sparks did not have permission to be in the garage and wanted charges pursued. Sparks was subsequently incarcerated in the Miami County Jail and charged with breaking and entering along with the probation violation warrant. That coming out of the Spring Creek Township off of 25A. Next one. Sex offender headed to prison again. A Piqua man will spend 80 years in prison for his 3 sex crimes involving minors. This is according to the Troy Daily News by Melanie Yingst. The Miami County Common Pleas Court Judge Stacy Wall this week sentenced Wayne Whirling, 58 of Piqua, to serve 2 4-year sentences to be served consecutively for 2 counts of third-degree felony gross sexual imposition. There were 2 separate victims that were known to Whirling. He was classified as a Tier 2 sex offender following the sentencing hearing. So he will get 8 years for that. For his 3 sex crimes, of course, he'll probably be tagged. I think he could probably go away for a little bit longer, a little bit of a light sentence, but we're not done yet here in the Crime Report. The former treasurer of the Ludlow Falls Volunteer Fire Department was sentenced to serve 5 years of community service in an attempt to repay the nearly $200,000 he stole from the department. Another article by Melanie Yingst from the Troy Daily News. We try and give credit where credit is due here. Robert Smith Jr., 67 of Ludlow Falls, entered a plea of no contest and was found guilty of third-degree felony theft in office last month. The alleged total loss of funds estimated by the Detective Division of the Miami County Sheriff's Office is approximately $192,236. Smith appeared with his attorney Steve King by video while Miami County Common Pleas Court Judge Stacy Wall conducted the sentencing hearing in the courtroom on Monday. Let's see what Wall gave him. He was ordered to repay the $129,000. I believe he got probation as well, if I'm not mistaken. Here we go. He ordered Smith to obtain full-time employment, abide by a curfew, pay court costs, and complete a mental health and substance abuse evaluation. Smith is also to make monthly payments to the department. Other special conditions of the charge include a lifetime ban from holding a public office or position of trust. That's a good call. Since the department was a volunteer, Smith did not have a state pension. sure there was a lot more to that story that was developing by the time it got to our desk here at the Troy Show. But that is it for the crime report this week. Always something going on out there, and it's good that we are aware. Time to glance through some articles here as we wind down the show. I've taken up a lot of your time tonight, of which I appreciate every minute of it, whether you agree with me or not. Something you didn't like on the show tonight, we offer our no money back guarantee on that. You can go to thetroyshow.net for that. Firefighters respond to a Union Street fire. This is something I actually responded to as well, because I had seen it posted in the citizens group. That's why I love these citizens group. This is the first time I've actually really felt in touch with this community, is these groups that were popping up like rabbits. Because I was homeschooled, I didn't get the chance to go to public school and really get to know anyone. I've lived here for so long, and I've never flowed with the grain. Okay, I've always been someone. I proudly admit it. It's probably one of the qualities that allows me to do this, I guess. But it is nice to get to know and interact, and it's a valuable tool, these groups. So if you want to join our group here, it's Troy Ohio Citizens 2.0. We are as relaxed as we possibly can be, as possibly can be. Facebook terms of service, illegal in nature, that's it. I'm not here to judge whose opinion's better or whose image of Troy is better. We just provide the group and maintain it. Free of charge, facebook.com/groups/Troy Ohio Citizens if you want to take the discussion further. But Troy firefighters were dispatched, according to Troy Daily News, to a report of a fire at the Troy laminating and coating plant in the 400 block of South Union Street on Monday. I saw it pop up. I was on my way onto this side of town anyway, so I crossed the river and went to Union Street. For anyone not familiar, it's kind of that weird industrial area that we don't really drive through that much. There's not really a reason to, but it is there. It does exist. It's kind of cool if you go back into some of these hidden industrial areas of Troy. So I pulled up there. They had the roads blocked off. By the time I got there, the renowned WHIO people were finishing their story. They had their little van, and the cops, one of them left. There were about 3 fire trucks there. They were all kind of standing around in a huddle discussing what had just happened there. So it was pretty much contained. There was no massive plume or anything. I believe the story was that, here it is, Assistant Chief of the Troy Fire Department said that a work crew was welding as part of the installation of new ductwork, which started a fire in a wall. The fire was difficult to reach as it was behind a large machine. The fire was extinguished, and firefighters then checked to ensure that it had not spread to any other areas. Less than $5,000 worth of damages. They did evacuate some employees at that time after placing the call to the county 911 dispatch. Here's a cool one. A local man has built a mini replica of Troy Square. I could do my best to verbally paint the picture for you, which is what I'm supposed to be good at, but in today's age, just go check it out. It's really cool. It's good to see it in person for yourself on Facebook. But this is coming from Tip City, from the Troy Daily News. Gail Stickelman retired from his career as an engineer over 20 years ago, but he still enjoys architecture in the process of building, according to the Troy Daily News. Stickelman, 86, completed the 1/8-inch scale model of the Troy Public Square this past February, sharing it with Miami Valley Today in early March. He said it took him about 4 months to complete. It's really cool. Go check it out. I'm sure you can go find it. We'll have the link to the article. I don't print the pictures on my paper. It's a waste of ink. But you can go check it out for yourself. Read our show notes. We'll have them posted down below, or wherever they end up, wherever you post these things. Wherever I post them to, in the respective description area, you can find our show notes and check them out. And go see the picture for yourself. So the local man has built a replica of the Troy Square down here. I wonder if he didn't include the construction. That was not included in the project. But hopefully, after all the construction's out of the way, it will be even better looking than it has been before. Let's see if there's anything else here to glance over. Other than that, the Troy PD pitched in, according to the Troy Daily News. Police Department SRO Tracy Long distributed lunch at a Cookson Elementary School. 1 month into the COVID-19 shutdown, they were helping out. The city school continues to approximately provide 7,500 meals every week for students. I believe that's on Mondays. You can go do that. They're just not doing the daily pickup that they were doing. They're condensing it into one day, and I believe that lands on Mondays. Some minor injuries were reported at a wreck. The Troy Fire Department medics, firefighters, and Troy police work at the scene of a multi-vehicle crash at South. You'll never guess this. What follows South? Can anyone take a stab at what follows South? Dorset and Arthur Drive on Wednesday afternoon. At least 3 injuries were reported along, although none were thought to be serious at the time. Got a picture of it here. I doubt, I don't know. This is kind of an odd article. I don't really see too many crash reports from Troy Daily News because it's a local paper. To have that many people to be able to go like a mainstream place would to get the people to the report of the car accident. But I'm glad whenever they come across stuff, they do their best to report it and get it out there. I try to do that on the Troy Show if I've come across something. The other day there were downed power lines at 55. I happened to be driving over that way. That's the cool part about local online shows like this, talk shows like this, is that there's plenty of issues to be discussed. There's plenty of things that have just as much weight as a mainstream national issue would have. And you get to hear it from someone who's in your community. You get to hear it. I drive around. I use the same stores, eat at the same places, see the same things everyone else does. But we were driving over there. The power line came down. It was that windy day. We got about 40 mile an hour. And it had just happened. The police department had just gotten there. The city of Troy had just gotten there. The wire was kind of dangled over a car. They were clearing that to make sure he was good to go first. And then that car took off and they shut that road down. But we did a live report of that. We try and catch it where we can. Do our best. We don't claim to be a full-blown news team here or anything like that. I recap stuff. I share opinion on stuff. I try and bring discussion together, 2 sides of the story together to present, because I believe that's the integrity of this show. It's the integrity I try and keep. And I believe you have just as much integrity as this, as my listener. I believe you are afforded that and deserve that to understand what's going on in the community. So that's what I try and do. And you would expect nothing less. So we stay to that lane, but we try and do as much as we can. And it's always growing. Like what we've managed to accomplish here in just a few short weeks, in a month or two now, with the Citizens Group, with this show, with the people we're talking, this is not only an eye-opener for me and an ever-learning experience for me. And that's why I like to ask questions. If I'm not informed on something, you'll never know if you don't ask the question. And sometimes you sound silly, like, oh, you didn't know that? Well, explain to me. That's why we have guests. That's why we talk about things. I try and do as much research as I can. I'm bound to be wrong about things as well. That's why I want to have actual citizens call in, with your take. That's kind of the point. And we really do. I have a lot of fun doing that. And I said this last show. This is the first time I really felt like what I'm doing really matters. And I'm just free to create and have fun up here. So we invite everyone to be a part of that. So what we've managed to accomplish is something mainstream media, they just can't wrap their head around. They can't. Yeah, I mean, people have a voice now, and they can just go out and start stuff. Now, Davidson was named to a presidential task force. President Donald Trump on Thursday named Congressman Warren Davidson, Republican out of Ohio here, a sign that you see a lot, to the presidential task force to reopen the American economy. Davidson of Troy brings over 15 years of experience owning and operating manufacturing businesses to this committee. As a small business owner, Davidson said he understands the unique challenges and hardships the business community faces as a result of closures. So a local representative, Warren Davidson, has been appointed to the presidential task force on reopening the American economy. It's pretty cool. We'll have that kind of a close link to D.C., bringing the local and the national level together. There's an opinion piece here from the Troy Daily News. I watch these opinion pieces just to see what other people, what far greater minds are. This one from Tom Dunn. I read through them, see if maybe there's something I think they're missing the point on, or if they nailed it. I think Tom Dunn did a pretty good job with this one. It's not some wish-washy article, feel-good thing. Some people like that. I don't. I like getting straight to stuff. That's me personally. You're welcome to whatever you enjoy. But this was entitled, What Are We to Believe? This is an opinion piece in the Troy Daily News. Crises like the coronavirus pandemic can have a value if we learn something from them, and I think we will learn a lot coming out of this. I agree with him on that. I'd say about 2/3 of this article here. It's a good read. Go check it out. What Are We to Believe is the title over at the Troy Daily News by Tom Dunn, a contributing columnist. I probably lost maybe a disagreement with him about the last third of the article. But the first two-thirds was kind of stuff that needs to be said, and I really liked where he was going with it. I thought it was pretty good a piece for a local piece like that. So go check it out. Troy Daily News is where you can find that at. Let me do something real quick here. I don't know if it's the way my computer prints things out. No, that is the official address. I was just verifying. It's tdn-net.com. A pet peeve of mine, but whatever. That's it for the show this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, for all those that listen, for the Paul Reese interview, for coming around live. We make the show available after recording on our Facebook page in video format. I also upload it to YouTube. If you happen to have YouTube Red, that is how you can do an audio variant of the show. I do not have a place where you can just listen to the audio yet. I'm working on it. It's something I always used to do that. Whenever I made a podcast, I've hosted many, made many, done a bunch of different projects throughout my 10 years in media and ever-growing years in media. I always made sure I had an RSS feed or a podcast, iTunes, whatever, but there's so many different platforms now. It's changed a little bit since I've operated it. I do everything through YouTube Red. I pay just over $10 a month. I get all the music I want off of YouTube. I get all of the podcasts I want off of YouTube. I get all of the content that I want off YouTube for that price, and I can close it out on my phone. It does not have to be active on my screen, and I can still get the audio from it. That's the advantage of YouTube Red. So I upload there, assuming most people have YouTube Red or listen like that. I drive truck for a living, so I don't listen to podcasts. I don't follow. About the only thing that I follow is like maybe one or two podcasts, and that's for when I'm driving. It usually turns out to be the Joe Rogan Show because I'm just driving along and I need something 3 hours, or it's varying other things, but I don't listen to podcasts that much. I did way back when I was forming myself, forming my opinions, forming my how I do shows, and taking little tidbits to form my own unique thing and to learn how to do radio, but I don't. I stopped because I would much rather, I live it. I do it. I don't need to listen back to something like that. I don't need to do that. I'll listen back to the show every once in a while to make sure that it sounded all right or whatever the case is, but that's kind of what I do. I don't keep up to date with what radio stations are doing. I don't keep up to date with what podcasts are doing. I just do my thing and stay in my lane, and whenever I have an idea, that way I know it's fresh. If I listen to other people's content, I will inadvertently, subconsciously pull stuff from their content, and that I don't want to do that. I don't want to copy someone. If there is ever a copying situation, I want it to be pure coincidence in my conscience. So I don't really listen to too much. So the audio thing is important to me. We do have a variant of YouTube. You can go over and check out our YouTube channel. Just type in The Troy Show. You'll find it. Or visit our new website, thetroyshow.net. We have all the links up over there. Top upper right-hand corner, it just says YouTube. Click it. Go right there. You can find a synopsis of why I've started the show, a little bit about me in textual form over there. I don't get into that whole team member thing. It's not about us here. I take pride in what I do. I do have an ego, 100%. I'll admit it. Any radio man who doesn't is lying to themselves. But we try to make it more about the citizens here and about our missions here than we do. So I don't do the whole staff member, team member thing long. Now, if you want to hear something, we'll do it here on the show. If you have a question to ask us in the email, beautifultroyshow@gmail.com, or somewhere, get in contact with us, or call in personally while we do the show and ask your questions. That's the time that we do this. The rest of the time we spend living our lives here in Troy, Ohio, a great community to live in Miami County, through the good and through the bad. I don't sit here with a blind over my eyes that a lot of people have to live in the positive realm. I respect it. I really do. I think that's a good aspect. I love life. It's an honor to wake up every day and live life. That's why I haven't been too affected by this whole virus thing. Anything could happen to us. I had a tornado go over my head. There had no control over that. To be honest, I don't feel we have much control over viruses, vaccine, but nature is sometimes, unfortunately, just... So take every day that you have as if it's your last. Enjoy it. I thank you for carving out time to listen to me. We do appreciate it. We'll catch you back here next Monday at 7 p.m. live on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beautiful Troy Show. Get involved in the conversation even further. Troy Ohio Citizens 2.0, facebook.com/groups/Troy Ohio Citizens. So the final point I'll make to that before I leave is you might notice I never mention my name on the show. I don't start with my name. I don't introduce myself. You're in it. You're in the thick of it. You're in the weekly recap. I am just a vessel. When you start this show, it's the Troy Show. It is the Troy Show. It is about this town and the surrounding community of Miami County, anything that might affect it statewide or nationwide. That's the point. I don't care if people know my name. I don't care if people who know it. But I've tried saying my name, and you're always told you got to come up with a catchy name when you're on the radio. You got to brand yourself. It always got in the way. It always made me feel weird having to say my own name on radio or fit that in there. There's content to be talked about here. There's people's lives and stories to be talked about here. I don't need to spend time, I'm so-and-so, and this is, because it's not about me at the end of the day, and I want people to know that. I have a lot of fun expressing my opinions. I'm grateful that people allow me to do that people listen to some of them. Maybe you disregard others. Maybe you call in. Maybe we have a debate. Who knows? I'm honored to know that this show is doing what it's supposed to do. I'm glad it is. This was a whim. I had no thought. I had not been thinking about doing the show for years or anything. I just one day was like, you know what? We got all this downtime in this quarantine. I've got all this equipment that I've bought over the years. Let's put it to use. Let's actually give this thing a go. And I think it's been phenomenal. The idea for this show formed probably about a week before, I don't know what the timeline really, I'm just guessing, before the Troy, Ohio Citizens original group got shut down, which we'll talk about that story someday. I'll get into it. It was a ridiculous situation, but we'll get into it. But then I saw that group go, and I thought, I got to create something. Why haven't I? I should have. I thought about creating one. Like, you can't just ban people for having an opinion on the city. That's absurd. There's plenty of people I disagree with in this city, but every single one of them is welcome to come here, sit on that couch. It might be studio chairs in the future. We're changing stuff in here. We try and make it as inviting as possible. Sit on that couch and talk with me. We might not we might not like each other. We might disagree, but they are all welcome to come and sit on that couch, no matter who I disagree with. Because if I am here able to spout my opinions, as harsh and brash as they may be at times, you are also allowed to spout your opinions. That's my view on it. So I do appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Thank you so much. We'll catch you back 7 p.m. every Monday right here at The Troy Show on Facebook, facebook.com/Beautiful Troy Show. I'm working on an outro. We've still got a big audio package we're going to be putting together here. We've got so much stuff. I got to end the show. If I keep talking about it, it'll go on forever. Just see it. Tune in Mondays at 7. We've got plenty of stuff down the pipeline. And remember, this is Troy on air.